The air above Hong Kong shimmered like heat rising from scorched metal. But this wasn't heat. It was reality tearing apart at the seams. Captain Mina Ashiro had seen many things in her years leading the 1st Division of the Japan Defense Force. She'd watched kaiju emerge from the ocean depths with the regularity of seasonal storms. She'd seen her soldiers push their combat suits beyond recommended fortitude limits, their bodies screaming under the strain of channeling power meant to rival monsters. She'd even learned to trust Kafka Hibino, the man who could become the very thing they'd sworn to destroy, as one of her most valuable operatives. But she had never seen the sky split open like a wound. Captain. Reality breach detected. Konomi Okanaji's voice crackled through the communication line, panic edging into her usually calm, analytical tone. It's not a kaiju emergence. It's something else entirely. Mina stood atop the crumbling remains of what had been Yokohama's eastern defense perimeter, her suit's fortitude release holding steady at 96%. Behind her, Vice Captain Sashiro Hashina had both of his specialized blades drawn, his characteristic grin replaced by grim focus. The kaiju they'd been fighting, a Fortitude 8.6 designated Razorback, lay in pieces across 3 city blocks, but there was no time to celebrate. The rift above them expanded, violet and emerald light bleeding into their dimension, like oil spreading across water. Through her suit's enhanced optics, Mina could see the dimensional membrane straining, reality on both sides pushing against a barrier that was never meant to be tested. All units, brace for the world inverted. There was no other word for it. One moment, Mina was standing on the rubble of Yokohama, and the next, gravity became a suggestion rather than a law. Her inner ear screamed conflicting information as the rift didn't just open, it consumed them. Sashiro, Kafka, Reno Ichikawa, Kokoru Shinomiya, and 24 JDF soldiers were pulled into a tunnel of impossible geometry, where up became sideways and forward became through. Kafka's voice cut through the chaos. Captain, I can feel something on the other side, something massive. Before Mina could respond, they were through. The first thing she registered was water, an entire ocean's worth of it, stretching to a horizon that looked wrong, like someone had adjusted the curvature of the earth itself. The second thing was the sound, a roar so deep and primal that it vibrated through her combat suit's reinforced plating and straight into her bones. The third thing was the monster. It rose from the water like a moving island, easily 400 feet tall, its hide a mottled blue-gray that glistened with bioluminescent patterns. But this wasn't like any kaiju she'd encountered. This thing was alien in a way that even Japan's kaiju weren't. Where their kaiju had evolved from Earth's oceans, mutated by unknown energies, this creature looked designed, purpose-built by something with an understanding of destruction as an art form. Category 4 kaiju detected. A voice boomed across the water, amplified by speakers that must have been the size of cars. Striker Eureka engaging. Mina's tactical mind was already processing the impossible. The voice was in English. They were no longer in Japan, possibly no longer in their world at all. And something was moving toward the kaiju that made even her enhanced vision struggle to track. It was a giant. No, not a giant. A machine. A humanoid war machine standing nearly as tall as the kaiju itself, painted in gleaming silver and red, moving with a grace that should have been impossible for something that massive. The machine's right arm came up, and Mina's suit sensors screamed warnings as they detected an energy signature building in its chest. Plasma cannon full charge. A lance of superheated plasma erupted from the machine's chest-mounted weapon system, striking the kaiju's center mass. The creature screamed, a sound that was somehow worse than its roar, and stumbled backward, bioluminescent blood steaming where the plasma had burned through its hide. What the hell is that? Kokoru whispered over the comm line, her usual confidence shaken. Reno's analytical voice responded first, some kind of mechanized weapons platform. The pilot-to-mass ratio doesn't make sense unless there's more than one pilot. Later. Mina snapped, her command voice cutting through the shock. We're exposed on the water. Hashina, establish a perimeter. Kafka, Captain, the kaijus detected us. Konomi's voice burst through, though the connection was crackling with interference. Redirecting toward your position. The massive creature's head swiveled with terrible intelligence, multiple eyes focusing on the cluster of JDF soldiers floating in their combat suits. It opened a maw filled with rows of serrated teeth and began to move. Kafka didn't wait for orders. Blue energy erupted across his body as he released his transformation, his human form exploding outward into the humanoid kaiju designated number 8. At 70 feet tall, he was dwarfed by both the attacking kaiju and the mysterious machine, but he moved with desperate purpose, launching himself toward the creature to intercept. Unidentified contact. The amplified voice shouted. Second kaiju signature detected. All Jaegers, weapons free. The silver machine, apparently called a Jaeger, pivoted with shocking speed, and Mina realized with cold horror that its weapons were tracking not toward the Category 4 kaiju, but toward Kafka. Hold fire. Mina roared, knowing they couldn't hear her, knowing it didn't matter. She pushed her suit's fortitude release to 98%, feeling her muscles strain as she rocketed across the water toward Kafka's position. He's with us. He's... The Jaeger's shoulder-mounted missiles launched, 12 warheads arcing through the air with contrails of white smoke. Kafka twisted mid-flight, his kaiju instincts saving him as he grabbed the Category 4 kaiju and used it as a shield. The missiles impacted against the creature's hide, explosions blossoming across its back. Striker Eureka, stand down. A new voice crackled across the open channel, female, authoritative, with an accent Mina couldn't quite place. New contacts are engaging the kaiju, not us. Reassess threat priority. The Jaeger pulled back, but its weapons remained trained on Kafka as he grappled with the Category 4. Around them, the water churned from the dimensional displacement of the JDF's arrival. Sashiro had organized the soldiers into a defensive formation, their suit weapons armed but utterly inadequate against threats on this scale. Mina's mind raced through tactical scenarios, each one worse than the last. They were in an unknown location, possibly an alternate dimension. The locals had weapons that could threaten even Kafka in his transformed state, and they were in the middle of what appeared to be an active war zone. The Category 4 kaiju broke free from Kafka's grip, its tail whipping around to catch him across the torso. He flew backward, crashing into the water with enough force to create a tsunami wave that would have capsized a battleship. Kafka. Reno's voice cracked with concern. The Jaeger Striker Eureka moved to capitalize on the kaiju's distraction, its massive fists crackling with what Mina's sensors identified as electrical discharge weapons. The machine was faster than something that size had any right to be, and its pilots fought with practiced synchronization that spoke of hundreds of hours in combat. But it wasn't enough. The Category 4's mouth opened wider, and Mina saw bioluminescence gathering in its throat, something that looked terrifyingly familiar to the acid spray attacks she'd seen from Fortitude 9 kaiju back home. Plasma cannon recharging. The Jaeger's pilots called out. 30 seconds. They didn't have 30 seconds. Kafka erupted from the water like a breaching whale, his kaiju form glowing with the blue energy that marked his transformation. He'd taken damage. Mina could see the tears in his hide already regenerating, but his eyes were focused, determined. He opened his own mouth, and the concentrated energy beam that had allowed him to match Fortitude 9 threats began to build. For a frozen moment, Mina saw the battlefield with perfect clarity. Her team displaced from everything they knew. A giant machine piloted by people who thought they were defending against a kaiju attack. Kafka, who existed in the impossible space between human and monster, and a Category 4 kaiju that was about to release an attack that would kill everyone in a half-mile radius. This was first contact with an entirely new world, and they were going to have to fight their way through it. All units, Mina said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of command that had seen them through 100 impossible battles. Engage in support of the mechanized platform. Avoid friendly fire. And someone get me a communication channel with whoever's piloting that machine. We need to talk. Now. Kafka's energy beam and the kaiju's acid spray released simultaneously, meeting in midair with a detonation that lit up the sky like a second sun. The shockwave hit a heartbeat later, and through the chaos and the spray and the roar of battle, Mina Ashiro began planning how to survive in a world that had never heard of the Japan Defense Force. The only certainty: nothing would ever be the same. Word count: 1,547. Here's a question that'll keep you thinking. If you could transform into a kaiju like Kafka, but it meant the whole world would see you as a monster first and a protector second, would you take that power? Drop your honest answer in the comments below. I want to know if you choose humanity or power. And hey, if you're loving this crossover chaos, smash that like button, share this with your fellow kaiju fans, and hit subscribe because we're just getting started. This story has 9 more sections of Pacific Rim versus Kaiju number 8 madness coming your way. Also, drop a Star Wars "What If" title in the comments that you'd want to see. What if Goku landed on Tatooine? What if Spawn arrived during the Clone Wars? What if Iron Man crashed on Coruscant? Tell me which character you want to see enter the Star Wars galaxy. The communication channel crackled to life with a burst of static that made Konomi wince in the mobile command center she'd hastily established on what appeared to be a military vessel, one that had responded to the kaiju emergence with alarming speed. Through the interference, a gruff Australian accent cut through the noise. Unidentified contacts. This is Marshall Hansen of the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps. You are currently in a restricted combat zone. Identify yourselves immediately or be classified as hostiles. Mina toggled her suit's external speakers, keeping her voice level despite the chaos surrounding them. The Category 4 Kaiju was regenerating from Kafka's energy blast, its hide already knitting together with disturbing efficiency. Marshall Hansen, this is Captain Mina Ashiro of the Japan Defense Force, 3rd Division. We are not hostiles. We're soldiers displaced through an unknown dimensional anomaly. The humanoid entity you're tracking is one of my operatives. There was a pause, the kind that spoke of incredulity rather than technical delay. Did you just say dimensional anomaly? The Marshal's voice carried the weight of a man who'd seen too much to dismiss anything outright, but was deeply tired of the universe throwing new problems at him. And you're calling that 70-foot kaiju one of your operatives? Affirmative on both counts, Mina replied, watching as Kafka ducked under a swipe from the Category 4's clawed arm. Even in his transformed state, he fought with tactical awareness, creating distance, analyzing patterns, looking for weaknesses. It was what separated him from true kaiju. He still thought like a soldier. Our world has been fighting kaiju for decades. My operative is unique, a hybrid, but he's on our side. Inside Striker Eureka's cockpit, Chuck Hansen exchanged a look with his father, Herc, their neural handshake carrying the wordless communication that made them one of the most effective Jaeger teams in the PPDC. Through the drift, they shared the same thought. This is either the strangest con we've ever encountered, or we just lost the monopoly on weird. Gypsy Danger, Crimson Typhoon, hold fire on the humanoid kaiju. Marshall Hansen's voice broadcast across all Jaeger channels. But keep it in your sights. If it makes one wrong move. Understood, Marshall, came the response from Gypsy Danger's pilot, a young man whose voice carried the distinctive American twang. But sir, we've got a bigger problem. The Category 4's regeneration rate is off the charts. It's like it's learning from the damage. Sashiro Hashina had positioned himself on the deck of what the locals called a transport frigate, his blades at ready. Through his communication link with Mina, he spoke with a dry humor that never quite left him, even in the most dire situations. Captain, I'm seeing 3 of those Jaeger machines now. The red one's got 3 arms, 3 arms. What kind of engineering philosophy leads to that design choice? Focus, Vice Captain, Mina responded, but she understood his point. The Jaegers were magnificent and baffling in equal measure. Crimson Typhoon moved with a fluid, almost martial arts grace despite its massive size, its 3 arms working in concert like a practiced fighter. Gypsy Danger was more straightforward, a brawler, all function over form, with fists that looked capable of punching through a mountain. And Striker Eureka, the silver speedster, fought like someone had taught a skyscraper how to box. The Category 4 Kaiju roared, a sound that Mina's audio sensors classified as having both sonic attack properties and psychological warfare components, and dove beneath the water surface. The ocean churned with its passage, leaving only the bioluminescent trail of its blood dispersing in its wake. Kaiju's going deep. Gypsy Danger's co-pilot called out, her voice sharp with urgency. Someone tell me we have a location. Konomi's fingers flew across her portable terminal, her analytical mind already adapting to the new sensor paradigms this world operated under. Captain, their tracking systems are different from ours, but I think I can interface. Requesting permission to link with their tactical network. Do it, Mina ordered. And Konomi, find out everything you can about where we are and what we're dealing with. Kafka surfaced from where the Kaiju's last attack had driven him underwater, his regeneration already completing, through the neural link that allowed Mina to monitor all her division members' vital signs. She could feel his elevated heart rate, not from fear, but from the adrenaline rush of transformation. The Kaiju side of him was eager for the fight. The human side was terrified of what that meant. Captain, Kafka's voice came through, distorted slightly by his transformed vocal cords. This thing fights different from our Kaiju. It's got tactics. Intelligence. Our Kaiju are aggressive but predictable. This one's hunting. Reno Ichikawa, who'd been running combat analysis from his position alongside Kokoru, spoke up. He's right, Captain. Movement patterns suggest pack hunting behavior, but there's only one Kaiju. Unless it's used to fighting in coordinated groups, Kokoru finished, her tactical intuition sharp as ever. Which means wherever these things come from, they're organized. On the PPDC command vessel, Marshal Hansen was having a similar conversation with his chief science officer, Dr. Hermann Gottlieb, whose frantic voice carried through the open channel. Marshal, the readings from these new contacts are fascinating. Their combat suits show energy outputs that should be impossible for individual infantry units. And the humanoid Kaiju. Its cellular structure is completely different from Breach Kaiju. It's almost as if it's human underneath the... Doctor. Hansen cut him off with the patience of a man used to managing brilliant but scatterbrained scientists. Can we kill the Category 4 or not? Well, yes, of course, but... Then we can discuss the fascinating bits after we're not all about to be Kaiju Chow. The water erupted. The Category 4 emerged not where anyone expected, but directly beneath Crimson Typhoon. The Chinese Jaeger barely had time to react before the Kaiju's jaws clamped down on its leg, teeth designed to crack continental plates, tearing through the Jaeger's armor, plating like tissue paper. Crimson Typhoon is down. The Wei Tang triplets, who piloted the Jaeger, screamed in unison, their three-way neural handshake carrying triple pain as feedback flooded through the drift. Con-pod integrity at 60%. Hydraulics failing. Kafka moved without hesitation, launching himself toward the grappled Jaeger. He hit the Kaiju with the force of an artillery shell, his clawed hands finding purchase on the creature's armored hide. The impact forced the Kaiju to release Crimson Typhoon, but its tail whipped around, catching Kafka across the face with enough force to send him sprawling. Mina saw her opening. Hashina Shinomiya, with me. We're providing close support. Captain, we can't damage that thing with our suit weapons, Kokora protested, even as she fell into formation. We don't need to damage it. We need to distract it. The three of them launched from the frigate deck, their combat suits' propulsion systems, screaming as they closed the distance to the Kaiju in seconds. Mina's suit fortitude held steady at 96% as she drew her specialized rifle, a weapon designed to punch through Fortitude 8 Kaiju hide at close range. It barely scratched the Category 4's armor, but it got the Kaiju's attention. 6 eyes, Mina's tactical mind cataloged with clinical detachment, swiveled to focus on the 3 JDF soldiers buzzing around its head like oversized hornets. The intelligence behind those eyes was unmistakable. This wasn't a mindless beast. This was a predator that understood threats and prioritized targets. And it had just decided they were worth killing. Striker, Gypsy, we've got its attention. Mina shouted across all channels. Hit it now. The 2 Jaegers moved in perfect synchronization, a testament to countless hours of combat coordination. Striker Eureka's fists became blurs of motion, each impact carrying the force of a tactical nuke, the electrical discharge of its sting blasters causing the Kaiju's muscles to spasm and lock. Gypsy Danger followed up with its plasma cannon, the superheated energy burning through the weakened sections of armor. But the Kaiju was adapting. Its hide began to secrete a viscous blue substance that hardened on contact with air, forming additional armor plating over the damaged sections. Mina had seen similar adaptation in Fortitude 9 Kaiju, but never this fast, never this efficient. It's learning. Dr. Gottlieb's voice was equal parts horror and fascination. The Kaiju is adapting to our attack patterns in real time. Kafka struggled to his feet, if a 70-foot Kaiju could be said to have feet, and Mina saw something shift in his posture. Through the neural monitoring link, she felt his determination crystallize into decision. "Captain," Kafka said quietly, "I need to go deeper." Full release. Mina's blood ran cold. Full release meant letting the Kaiju side take more control, accessing power levels that pushed even Kafka's unique physiology to its limits. Every time he did it, there was a risk he wouldn't come back fully human. "Kafka, we don't know how this world's physics will affect." "We're out of options, Captain. That thing is going to kill those Jaeger pilots if we don't end this now." Mina looked at the tactical situation with a cold calculus that had kept her alive through 100 Kaiju battles. Crimson Typhoon was crippled. Striker Eureka and Gypsy Danger were holding the line, but the Kaiju was adapting faster than they could adjust tactics. Her team was in an unknown world with unknown rules, and every second they fought was a second closer to someone dying. "Do it," she said quietly. "But Kafka, come back to us." "Always do, Captain." The transformation was visible even from a distance. Kafka's body began to glow with intensified blue energy, his muscle mass increasing, his regeneration accelerating until wounds closed almost instantly. The Kaiju power that he'd spent years learning to control surged through him, and for a moment, just a moment, Mina saw something ancient and terrible look out through his eyes. Then Kafka roared, and the sound carried harmonics that made the Category 4 Kaiju pause mid-strike, its predator instincts suddenly screaming warnings about the thing in front of it. On the PPDC command vessel, alarms began shrieking as sensors detected energy signatures that shouldn't have been possible outside of a nuclear reactor going critical. "What the hell is that?" Marshal Hansen demanded. Dr. Gottlieb stared at his readouts, his hands trembling slightly. "Marshal, I think we just found something more dangerous than the Kaiju we were fighting." In the drift aboard Striker Eureka, Chuck and Herc Hansen felt their Jaeger's AI systems struggle to classify the entity now moving toward the Category 4 with terrifying purpose. The machine's threat assessment algorithms kept cycling through options: Kaiju, unknown; ally, threat, unknown, 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 before finally settling on a classification that made both pilots' blood run cold. Apex Predator. Kafka hit the Category 4 Kaiju like a meteor strike, and the real battle began. The Pacific Ocean had witnessed many apocalyptic battles in the years since the breach opened, but nothing quite like this. Kafka's full-release form moved with a speed that defied his mass, each strike carrying enough kinetic energy to create shockwaves that rippled across the water surface for miles. The Category 4 Kaiju, designated Knifehead 2, by the PPDC for its blade-like protrusions, met him with equal ferocity, two titans clashing in a display of raw power that made the Jaegers look almost fragile by comparison. Inside Gypsy Danger's Conpod, Raleigh Beckett and Mako Mori stood locked in the drift, their neural handshake allowing them to move their Jaeger with fluid precision. But even through their combined consciousness, they struggled to process what they were seeing. "Raleigh." Mako's voice was soft in his mind, carrying the undertone of concern that came through their link. "The humanoid Kaiju, it's protecting us." She was right. Every time Knifehead 2 tried to flank toward the damaged Crimson Typhoon or position itself for an attack on the Jaegers, Kafka intercepted, forcing the creature to focus on him. It was tactical awareness that no breach Kaiju had ever demonstrated. The ability to prioritize the protection of others over delivering damage to enemies. Gypsy Striker, flank left and right. Marshal Hansen's voice cut through their observations. Whatever that thing is, it's giving us an opening. Use it. But before either Jaeger could move, the water around them began to churn with an intensity that had nothing to do with the ongoing battle. Konomi's voice burst across all channels, panic breaking through her usual professional composure. Captain. Secondary dimensional reading. Something else is coming through. Mina's heart sank. Another kaiju? I can't tell. The signature is similar to what brought us here, but it's fragmenting, breaking into multiple. The ocean surface erupted in 12 different locations simultaneously. What emerged wasn't kaiju. It was the rest of the Japan Defense Force. Captain Narumi of the 1st Division broke the surface first, his suit's fortitude release blazing at 92% as he took in the battlefield with wide eyes. Behind him came platoon after platoon of JDF soldiers, all in various states of confusion and combat readiness. Some had been mid-battle when the rift took them. Others had been in training facilities, medical bays, or off-duty quarters. The dimensional anomaly hadn't just pulled Mina's team through. It had grabbed nearly 300 JDF personnel from across Japan and deposited them directly into a war zone in another universe. Captain Ishiro. Narumi's voice was steady despite the circumstances, the mark of a veteran officer. Requesting sitrep. Where the hell are we? And why is Hibino fighting what looks like a mutant offshore kaiju? Before Mina could respond, the situation escalated. Knifehead 2, apparently deciding that one impossible opponent was bad enough, released its own contingency. The bioluminescent patterns across its hide pulsed in a sequence that Mina's experience recognized immediately, a distress call. Every kaiju they'd fought in Japan that operated in packs or swarms used similar biochemical signals. Oh no, Dr. Gottlieb's voice went up an octave. Oh no, Marshal, it's calling for reinforcements. How many? Hansen demanded. I'm detecting, dear God, multiple breach signatures. It's not calling for reinforcements from here. It's calling them through the breach itself. The ocean 10 miles to the west began to glow with the eerie blue light that marked a breach opening. Not the main breach. This was something new, something smaller, but no less terrifying. Through it came shapes that moved with coordinated purpose. 3 more Category 4 kaiju emerged, followed by something that made even Kafka hesitate in his assault. It was larger than the Category 4s, easily pushing into what the PPDC would classify as Category 5 territory. But more than its size, it was the design that set it apart. Where the other kaiju looked organic, evolved, this one looked crafted. Its hide was segmented in ways that suggested armor plating. Its limbs moved with mechanical precision. And worst of all, mounted along its spine were what looked disturbingly like weapons hardpoints. Category 5 confirmed. The PPDC tactical officer's voice cracked with stress, designating target as Slattern class. All Jaegers, this is now a Type 0 emergency. Aboard the command vessel, Marshal Hansen made a decision that would have been unthinkable 20 minutes ago. He opened a direct channel to Mina Ashiro. Captain, I don't know who you are or where you came from, but right now I don't care. We've got 4 kaiju incoming, and we're down 1 Jaeger. I need every combat-capable asset in the water. That includes your people and your hybrid. Mina looked across the water at the 300 JDF soldiers now treading water in their combat suits, many still disoriented from the dimensional transition. She thought about the impossible situation they'd been thrown into, about the world they'd left behind, about every protocol and procedure that said she should establish secure perimeter and gather intelligence before committing to action. Then she thought about what would happen if those 5 kaiju made landfall. All JDF personnel, this is Captain Ishiro, her voice cut across every frequency, carried by Konomi's rapidly adapting communication suite. We are currently in an unknown dimension, facing multiple kaiju-class threats. I know you're confused. I know you're scared. But right now, there are giant machines out there with pilots who are fighting to protect their world, and they need our help. We are the Japan Defense Force. We have never abandoned our duty to protect humanity from kaiju threats. We're not starting now. All divisions, Combat Formation Delta. Fortitude, release authorized up to personal limits. Engage and destroy. The response was immediate and heartening. 300 voices responded as one. Yes, Captain. Captain Narumi moved to Mina's position with practiced efficiency. His suit's enhanced movement making him a blur across the water. Captain Ishiro, 1st Division ready for deployment. What's the target priority? The 3 Category 4s, Mina replied, her tactical mind already forming the battle plan. Leave the Category 5 to the Jaegers and Kafka. Our suits can't put out enough damage to threaten something that size, but we can tie up its support and prevent a coordinated assault. Narumi grinned, the expression of a man who'd found his element even in the most impossible circumstances. Understood. 1st Division will take the eastern flank. Recommend 2nd Division take center. 3rd takes west. Approved. Move out. The JDF deployed with a precision that left the PPDC personnel watching in awe. 300 soldiers in combat suits that let them match Kaiju-level threats moved across the water like a mechanized army, splitting into coordinated teams with practiced efficiency. Each division had its specialists, heavy weapons operators, close combat experts, reconnaissance units, and tactical support. Sashiro Hashina found himself leading a strike team of blade specialists, his own dual weapons gleaming as he addressed his squad. Listen up. These kaiju are bigger than anything we faced, but the principles remain the same. Find the weak points, exploit them, and don't try to be a hero. We're here to support, harass, and survive. Questions? Vice Captain, one of the younger soldiers, spoke up, his voice tight with anxiety. What if our weapons can't penetrate their hide? Sashiro's grin was sharp as his blades. Then we'll get creative. Now move. Aboard Striker Eureka, Chuck Hansen watched the deployment through his Jaeger's external cameras. His consciousness merged with his father's in the drift. Their shared thoughts carried a mixture of disbelief and grudging respect. Asterisk 300 soldiers in powered armor versus 4 kaiju. They're either incredibly brave or completely insane. Asterisk. Maybe both, Herc's thoughts responded. But right now, we'll take whatever help we can get. The Category 4 kaiju hit the JDF lines like a tsunami meeting a seawall. 1st Division engaged the eastern kaiju with coordinated fire, their specialized weapons designed to punch through fortitude-rated hide, finding purchase in the joints and softer tissue between armor plates. The kaiju roared in pain and confusion. It was used to fighting single massive opponents, not swarms of smaller threats that moved with tactical precision. Kakaru Shinomiya led her team in a daring assault, using her enhanced mobility to reach the kaiju's back and deliver sustained fire to its sensory organs. Target the eyes, she shouted. Blind it, and it can't coordinate with the others. The kaiju thrashed, its tail sweeping through the water with enough force to create a wave that would have capsized a frigate. 2 JDF soldiers were caught in the displacement, their suit's fortitude release spiking to maximum as they struggled against the hydraulic force. Rino Ichikawa was there in an instant. His suit's power allocation shifted entirely to strength enhancement. He grabbed both soldiers and pulled them clear, his analytical mind already calculating the kaiju's attack patterns. It's favoring its left side. Structural weakness from previous battle damage. All units, concentrate fire on the left flank. Captain Narumi ordered, and 50 energy weapons fired in unison. The kaiju's hide began to crack. Meanwhile, Kafka had closed the distance with the Category 5, and the difference in their combat approaches was stark. The Category 5 fought with brutal efficiency, each strike calculated for maximum damage. Kafka fought with desperate determination, his enhanced regeneration allowing him to trade blows that would have crippled the Jaegers. But he was losing. The Category 5's armor was unlike anything Kafka had encountered. Each impact should have cracked bone and torn flesh, but instead his strikes glanced off hardened plates that seemed to absorb and redistribute kinetic energy. And worse, the creature was learning his patterns, adapting to his fighting style with disturbing speed. A massive claw caught Kafka across the torso, tearing through his hide and sending blue blood spraying across the water. He regenerated, but slower this time, Full release was burning through his reserves faster than normal. The dimensional displacement, the alien physics of this world. Something was interfering with his transformation. Kafka's in trouble. Mako's voice carried through the Jaeger channels. Gypsy danger. Requesting permission to engage the Category 5. Negative. Marshal Hansen's response was immediate. Gypsy, support the JDF forces. Stryker, you're our fastest unit. Get to the Category 5 and back up that hybrid before it goes down. Chuck and Herc didn't need to speak their agreement. In the drift, they were one mind, one purpose. Stryker Eureka surged forward, its enhanced speed allowing it to cross the distance in seconds. The Jaeger's fists, crackling with electrical discharge, slammed into the Category 5's flank. The Kaiju turned, and for the first time, Mina saw something that chilled her blood. The Category 5 looked at Stryker Eureka with recognition. Not the animal recognition of a predator identifying prey, but the calculated assessment of an intelligence evaluating a known threat. This thing had fought Jaegers before. It had killed Jaegers before, and it was eager to add another to its count. The Category 5's mouth opened, revealing not teeth, but what looked disturbingly like a bioorganic cannon. Energy began to build within its throat, not the acid spray of a typical kaiju, but something that registered on Stryker Eureka's sensors as electromagnetic in nature. Incoming EMP attack. Herc Hansen's warning came too late. The pulse erupted from the Category 5's mouth, washing over Stryker Eureka in a wave of energy. Inside the conpod, every system went haywire. The drift connection flickered. Chuck and Herc suddenly experiencing the horrifying sensation of being torn apart from each other's consciousness. Emergency systems kicked in, but the Jaeger was dead in the water, its neural interface struggling to reboot. The Category 5 raised one massive claw, preparing to deliver a killing blow to the helpless Jaeger. It never landed. Kafka, bleeding and struggling, threw himself into the strike path. The claw designed to penetrate Jaeger armor punched clean through his torso instead, blue blood fontaining from a wound. But he held on, wrapping both arms around the Category 5's limb and pulling, using his body weight to drag the creature off balance. Kafka. Mina's scream carried across all frequencies. Through the neural monitoring link, she felt his pain, felt his transformation starting to fail, felt the human consciousness that was Kafka Hibino struggling to maintain control as the kaiju instinct screamed at him to flee, to heal, to survive. But Kafka Hibino had never been good at running away. Captain, his voice was weak, distorted by pain and transformation failure. Get everyone out of here. This thing, it's not from our world. It's not from their world. It's something else. The Category 5 tried to shake him off, but Kafka held on with desperate strength. His body was failing, his regeneration no longer able to keep up with the damage. But he'd bought precious seconds, seconds the JDF used to reposition, seconds that let Stryker Eureka's systems begin their reboot sequence, seconds that might mean the difference between survival and annihilation. On the command vessel, Dr. Gottlieb stared at his readings with dawning horror. Marshal, he whispered, the Category 5, it's not biological. Not entirely. It's a hybrid. Part organic, part technological. Someone built this thing. Marshal Hansen's face went pale. The precursors. Yes. And if they've started engineering anti-Jaeger, Kaiju. Gottlieb didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The war had just entered a new phase. And the JDF had arrived right in the middle of it. The realization hit Mina Ashiro with the force of a physical blow. They weren't just displaced in space. They were caught in someone else's war. And that war was far more complex than simple monster attacks. All units converge on Kafka's position. Mina's command cut through the chaos. Priority Alpha. Extract the hybrid before transformation failure becomes critical. But even as she gave the order, she knew they were seconds from catastrophe. Kafka's regeneration had slowed to a crawl, blue blood streaming from wounds that refused to close. The Category 5 had adapted to his presence, and now it was doing something that made Mina's tactical instincts scream warnings. It was studying him. The massive kaijus' multiple eyes focused on Kafka with an intensity that spoke of intelligence, not animal cunning, but calculated analysis. Its bioorganic sensors were scanning him, cataloging his cellular structure, his energy signature, his very existence. And somewhere in whatever hive mind controlled these creatures, that data was being recorded. Captain Ishiro. Dr. Gottlieb's voice burst through the communication channel, panic overwhelming his usual scientific detachment. Pull your operative back now. The Category 5 is performing biological reconnaissance. If it transmits his genetic data through the breach, what happens? Mina demanded, already moving, her suit's fortitude release pushing past 96% into the danger zone of 98%. Then the precursors learn how to engineer kaiju specifically designed to kill him. And if they can analyze his hybrid nature, they might learn how to create their own hybrids. The implications crashed through Mina's mind like cascading dominoes. An enemy that could create kaiju-human hybrids, that could weaponize the very thing that made Kafka unique, that could turn his greatest strength into a template for mass production. Hashina. Mina barked. I need a distraction now. The vice captain didn't hesitate. 1st Division Blade Specialists, on me. We're going for the eyes. 12 JDF soldiers broke formation, their suits screaming as they pushed fortitude releases to maximum. They hit the Category 5 like a coordinated surgical strike. Blades designed to cut through kaiju hide, finding purchase in the softer tissue around the creature's sensory organs. The kaiju roared, a sound that carried harmonics of pain and fury, and released its grip on Kafka. The hybrid fell, his massive form hitting the water with a splash that sent waves radiating outward. His transformation was flickering now, blue energy stuttering like a dying light. Reno Ichikawa was already there, his analytical mind calculating trajectories and energy expenditures. I've got him. Kokoro, I need support. Kokoro Shinomiya dove beneath the surface, using her suit's enhanced strength to help support Kafka's failing form. Up close, she could see the extent of the damage, wounds that would have killed any normal kaiju 3 times over, held together only by the rapidly depleting reserves of his transformation. Kafka, she said quietly, stay with us. We're getting you out. His eyes, still more kaiju than human, focused on her with difficulty. Can't. Hold it much longer. Then don't. Let it go. We'll protect your human form. Too dangerous. If I change back here, no protection. He was right, and Kokoro knew it. In his human form, Kafka was vulnerable, just flesh and bone in the middle of a battlefield designed to kill giants. But if he held the transformation much longer, he'd burn out completely, possibly permanently. Above them, the tactical situation continued to deteriorate. Stryker Eureka Systems finally completed their reboot, the Jaeger's neural interface reconnecting Chuck and Herkansen with a jolt that made both pilots gasp. Through the drift, they felt each other's relief, fear, and determination surge back into synchronization. Stryker Eureka online. Chuck's voice carried the sharp edge of combat focus. Engaging Category 5. But the Category 5 had learned from its previous encounter. As Stryker Eureka closed the distance, the Kaiju's tail, previously used only for balance and blunt force attacks, split open along previously hidden seams. From within emerged what looked disturbingly like organic missile pods. Secondary weapon system. Herc shouted, evade. Stryker Eureka twisted with impressive agility, but 3 of the biomissiles found their mark, exploding against the Jaeger's armor with concussive force that rattled the pilot's teeth even through the shock absorption systems. The Conpod's integrity dropped another 15%. We can't take many more hits like that. Chuck's frustration bled through the drift. Meanwhile, Gypsy Danger had joined the JDF forces engaging the 3 Category 4s, and Mako Mori was experiencing something she'd never encountered in years of Jaeger combat. Coordinated infantry support that actually worked. The JDF fought like a single organism, each unit supporting the others with practiced efficiency. When a kaiju focused on the Jaeger, JDF soldiers would swarm its flanks, drawing attention and creating openings. When the kaiju turned to deal with the infantry, Gypsy Danger would deliver devastating strikes to exposed weak points. Raleigh, Mako's thoughts flowed through the drift, carrying admiration. They're magnificent. Yeah, Raleigh agreed, even as he guided Gypsy's plasma cannon to target a Category 4's exposed underbelly. But they're also getting tired. Those suits can't maintain that power output forever. He was right. Across the battlefield, JDF soldiers were hitting their limits. Fortitude release, above 90%, could only be sustained for minutes before physical breakdown began. Some had already dropped to 80%, then 70%, their suits' power output declining as their bodies refused to channel more energy. Captain Irumi felt his own limits approaching, his fortitude release flickering between 89% and 87% as muscle fatigue set in. But he'd faced impossible odds before, and the 1st Division hadn't earned its reputation by giving up when things got difficult. All units, tactical withdrawal to secondary positions. Narumi ordered. Rotate with fresh troops, recover, then re-engage. We're marathon runners, not sprinters. It was sound tactics, and it kept his division in the fight. But Mina could see the larger strategic picture, and it wasn't good. They were holding the line, but barely. The Category 4s were adapting to JDF tactics. The Category 5 was systematically dismantling Striker Eureka, despite the Jaeger's best efforts. And Kafka, their strongest asset, was down. Then Konomi's voice cut through the tactical chatter with information that changed everything. Captain, I've finished analyzing their command structure and network protocols. I can interface with their systems now, and, Captain, you need to see this. Make it quick, Konomi. The PPDC has detailed records of every Kaiju emergence, every Jaeger battle, every tactical encounter for the past decade. And, Captain, their Kaiju come from a single source. There's a dimensional rift at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean called the Breach. It's not a natural phenomenon. It's artificially maintained by an alien species called the Precursors. Mina processed this as she fired her rifle at a Category 4's leg joint, the weapon's energy output barely sufficient to score the armored hide. Artificial? They're manufacturing these Kaiju. Yes. And according to PPDC intelligence, the Kaiju are getting stronger, more advanced, more frequent. It's not random attacks, it's a systematic invasion strategy. They're testing our defenses, learning from each engagement, and engineering the next generation of Kaiju to overcome whatever killed the previous one. The tactical implications were staggering. This wasn't like fighting Kaiju in Japan, where they emerged from the ocean with some mysterious but apparently natural origin. This was warfare against an intelligent enemy that could learn, adapt, and iterate. Does the PPDC have a counter-strategy? Mina asked. There was a pause. They did. It failed 6 months ago. They lost 30 Jaegers and thousands of personnel trying to close the breach with a nuclear weapon. The plan was sound, but the execution failed because they didn't have enough force to penetrate to the breach location while fighting off defending Kaiju. Mina's mind raced. Konomi, hypothetically, what would we need to successfully close this breach? According to their models, a team capable of fighting through multiple Category 4 and 5 Kaiju, reaching the breach at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. We're talking depths of over 2 miles, planting a high-yield nuclear device with a biological signature to bypass the breach's dimensional filter, and escaping before detonation. The PPDC estimated probability of success at less than 5%. What if we had 300 JDF soldiers in combat suits, multiple Jaegers, and a Kaiju human hybrid? The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Captain, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Before Mina could answer, the Category 5 made its move. The massive Kaiju had been taking damage from Striker Eureka's sustained assault, but it had been allowing the damage, letting the Jaeger commit to close-quarters combat. Now it revealed why. The Category 5's chest split open, not from injury, but by design, revealing a cavity that pulsed with bioluminescent energy. The same EMP signature that had disabled Striker Eureka before began building again, but this time at a magnitude that made the previous pulse look like a warning shot. Full-spectrum electromagnetic pulse incoming. Dr. Gottlieb's scream barely preceded the activation. All Jaeger's emergency shutdown. It's going to fry every electrical system in a 10-mile radius. Aboard Gypsy Danger, Raleigh and Mako felt their Jaeger's systems begin emergency power-down protocols, trying to protect critical systems by shutting down everything non-essential. Crimson Typhoon, already damaged, went completely dark. Striker Eureka, caught at point-blank range, had no chance to even attempt shutdown. The pulse erupted. It washed over the battlefield like an invisible tsunami, and every piece of technology more complex than a mechanical watch simply died. Jaegers froze mid-motion, their neural interfaces severing with dramatic abruptness that left pilots gasping in pain. The PPDC command vessel's lights went dark. Communication systems flatlined. And 300 JDF combat suits, their power systems suddenly offline, became 300 pounds of dead weight. Soldiers plunged into the ocean, their suits no longer providing propulsion or buoyancy. Some managed to trigger manual release mechanisms, abandoning the suits to swim in their undergarments. Others struggled with jammed systems, fighting panic as they sank. Mina felt her own suit die around her, the familiar hum of power distribution cutting to silence. She hit the emergency release, feeling the suit's chest plates split open as she kicked free. The ocean water was shockingly cold after the climate-controlled interior of her suit. Around her, the JDF was in chaos. Soldiers struggling in the water, calling out for assistance, trying to reach each other without the enhanced mobility their suits provided. All the tactical advantages they'd brought to this fight, speed, strength, fortitude, release, gone in an instant. The Category 5 looked at the disabled Jaegers and helpless soldiers with what could only be described as satisfaction. Then it began to move toward them with deliberate, methodical purpose. On the now dark command vessel, Marshal Hansen stood in the emergency-lit bridge, watching his entire defensive line collapse. 3 Jaegers down, 300 foreign soldiers about to be slaughtered, and a Category 5 Kaiju that had just demonstrated it could neutralize every tactical advantage humanity had developed. "God help us," he whispered. But help came from an unexpected source. Kafka Hibino, his transformation finally failing completely, reverted to human form. He should have been vulnerable, helpless, just another soldier treading water. But as the blue energy of his kaiju form faded, he felt something else rising, something he'd been suppressing because it didn't fit the neat categories of human or kaiju. The dimensional displacement that had brought the JDF to this world hadn't just transported them through space. It had exposed them to the fundamental energies of this reality, energies that resonated with the kaiju power inside Kafka in ways he didn't fully understand. He felt the breach, not as a distant threat, but as a presence, a doorway that called to the kaiju part of his nature. And through that connection, he felt the minds on the other side, the precursors, the alien intelligence that manufactured these weapons of mass destruction. They were watching, learning, planning. And Kafka Hibino, the man who'd spent his entire adult life cleaning up kaiju corpses before becoming one himself, made a decision that would change everything. He opened his mind to the breach and let them see him. The precursor's response was immediate and overwhelming. The Category 5 froze mid-motion, its bioorganic systems receiving new instructions. The 3 Category 4s stopped their attacks on the scattered JDF soldiers. Every kaiju on the battlefield turned to focus on a single point, the human treading water where the mysterious hybrid had been moments before. Dr. Gottlieb, working by emergency lighting in his lab, stared at his still-functioning analog instruments with dawning horror. "No," he breathed. No, they've identified him. They've marked him as primary target. Every kaiju in a 50-mile radius is going to converge on his location." Marshal Hansen grabbed a radio handset, old technology, but EMP-proof. "Someone get me a location on that hybrid's human form. And someone tell me how long until the Jaegers can restart." 15 minutes for basic systems, sir." A technician called back. "Full combat capability in 30. "We don't have 30 minutes," Hansen said grimly. In the water, Mina swam toward Kafka's position, her years of military training overriding the exhaustion in her limbs. She reached him just as he was surfacing from a dive, his face pale, but his eyes clear. "Kafka," she said quietly, "what did you do?" "What I had to, Captain," he replied. "They were going to kill everyone. This way, they're only focused on me." "That's not." Mina stopped, seeing the determination in his face. The same determination that had driven him to join the Defense Force, despite being decades older than typical recruits. The same determination that had led him to accept becoming a kaiju if it meant protecting people. "We're not leaving you." "Captain Ishiro," a new voice interrupted, Marshal Hansen, his words carried by a sailor with a megaphone on the darkened command vessel. "I don't know what your operative just did, but every kaiju is about to descend on your position. We have a plan, but it requires trust and cooperation. Are you willing to listen?" Mina looked at her scattered forces, at the dead Jaegers, at the kaiju beginning to circle like sharks that had scented blood. She thought about the breach, about the precursors, about a war that wasn't hers, but had become hers the moment dimensional physics had dragged them into this reality. "We're listening," she called back. "Then get your people to the shore. We're evacuating to the Shatterdome, our fortified Jaeger base. It's EMP shielded, and it's the only place we can regroup before they hit us again. And then," Marshal Hansen's voice was grim but determined, "then we come up with a plan to end this. Permanently." The Category 5 roared, a sound that echoed across the ocean and into the city beyond, a promise of destruction to come. The war for two worlds had begun. The Hong Kong Shatterdome was a monument to humanity's defiance, a massive fortified structure built to house, repair, and deploy Jaegers against the kaiju threat. Its walls were reinforced concrete 20 feet thick, its power systems redundant and EMP hardened, its interior a maze of gantries, repair bays, and command centers that hummed with purposeful activity even in crisis. Mina Ashiro had seen military installations across Japan, but nothing quite like this. 300 personnel, Marshal Hansen said as he led her through the main concourse, emergency lighting casting harsh shadows across his weathered face. No identification, no records in any database. Combat suits that operate on principles our engineers can't fully explain. And a soldier who can transform into a 70-foot kaiju. "Captain Ishiro, you're going to have to give me more than dimensional displacement if you want my people to trust yours." They walked past repair bays where technicians swarmed over the damaged Crimson Typhoon, welding torches sparking in the dim light. Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka stood in their deployment cradles, diagnostic systems slowly coming back online after the EMP attack. The Jaegers looked different from this perspective, not like invincible titans, but like wounded soldiers waiting for the strength to fight again. Mina chose her words carefully. "Marshal, in our world, kaiju have been emerging from the ocean for over 50 years. We don't have Jaegers. We develop combat suits that allow individual soldiers to match kaiju-level threats through what we call fortitude release, channeling our physical and mental energy to superhuman levels. It's effective, but limited. We can handle fortitude 8 or 9 threats with coordinated teams, but anything beyond that." She paused. "That's where Kafka comes in. The hybrid." "Yes. 3 years ago, he was exposed to kaiju tissue during an emergence event. Instead of dying, he gained the ability to transform. He's the only one of his kind in our world, part human, part kaiju, fully in control of both sides." Hansen stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "And you trust him?" "Completely. With my life. With the lives of everyone in the Defense Force. He's proven himself 100 times over." The Marshal studied her face, looking for deception or doubt. Whatever he saw there seemed to satisfy him, because he nodded slowly. "Then I'll extend that trust. But Captain, you need to understand what we're dealing with here. The kaiju in our world aren't random. They're weapons manufactured by an alien species we call the precursors. These aliens have been trying to colonize Earth for decades, sending increasingly powerful kaiju through a dimensional rift called the breach. Your Dr. Gottlieb briefed me on the basics during the evacuation," Mina confirmed. But he mentioned a failed assault on the breach. What happened? Hansen's expression darkened. 6 months ago, we tried to end this war. The plan was to use a nuclear weapon with a Kaiju's biological signature to pass through the breach's dimensional filter and detonate on the other side, collapsing the rift permanently. We sent our best team, 2 Jaegers for pilots, the most experience we had. What went wrong? The precursors were ready. They'd learned from every previous breach approach, engineered Kaiju specifically to defend it. We lost both Jaegers before they got within a mile of the target. 30 good people died that day, and we were no closer to closing the breach. He paused, pain flickering across his face. Since then, we've been fighting a defensive war, knowing that every battle buys us a little more time, but brings us no closer to victory. The Kaiju are getting stronger, more frequent, more specialized. We're dying by degrees. They reached the command center, a circular room dominated by a massive holographic display showing the Pacific Ocean and the current Kaiju positions. The Category 5 had returned to the breach vicinity, but the 3 Category 4s were circling the Hong Kong coastline at a safe distance, waiting, Mina realized, for orders from the precursors. Dr. Hermann Gottlieb was hunched over a console, his fingers dancing across analog controls and manual input systems that had survived the EMP. Beside him, Dr. Newton Geisler, introduced earlier as the PPDC's Kaiju biology expert, was examining data on a tablet that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts. Marshal. Gottlieb looked up, his eyes bright with exhausted excitement. I've been analyzing the energy signatures from the dimensional rift that brought our guests here. It's fascinating. The quantum mechanics are completely unprecedented. The rift didn't just connect 2 points in space. It connected 2 entire realities, each with their own physical laws, and... Doctor, Hansen interrupted with the patience of long practice. Can you explain it in terms that will help us survive the next Kaiju attack? Gottlieb deflated slightly. Yes. Well, the short version is that the rift appears to be closing. Whatever phenomenon brought the JDF through was temporary, a random fluctuation in dimensional barriers, or perhaps a deliberate breach by unknown parties. Regardless, the connection is degrading. I estimate it will seal completely within 72 hours. Mina felt her stomach drop. Can we reopen it? Send my people home? Theoretically, perhaps. But it would require energy levels equivalent to a nuclear detonation, precise dimensional coordinates that we don't have, and technology that doesn't exist in either of our worlds. Gottlieb's expression was sympathetic. Captain, I'm sorry, but you and your people may be here permanently. The implications crashed through Mina's mind. 300 soldiers, cut off from their families, their world, everything they'd known. Some had children, partners, parents who would never know what happened to them. And she was responsible for all of them. Captain Ishiro, Newton Geisler, spoke up, his voice carrying a manic energy that seemed at odds with the grim situation. I know this is a lot to process, but we might have a silver lining here. I've been studying tissue samples from your operative, the ones he left behind when he transformed. And I gotta say, this is revolutionary stuff. The way his cells integrate Kaiju biology while maintaining human consciousness. The energy efficiency of his transformation, the regeneration factor. If we could understand it, maybe even replicate it. Dr. Geisler, Mina's voice was cold. Kafka Hibino is a person, not a research specimen. Right, of course. Newton backpedaled quickly. I just meant, with his cooperation, we might be able to develop countermeasures against the precursor's Kaiju. They've never encountered anything like him. That Category 5's reaction when it scanned him? Pure confusion. Their entire biological database doesn't have a classification for friendly Kaiju. We could use that. Marshal Hansen raised a hand, forestalling further argument. Let's table the science discussion for now. Captain Ishiro, I need to know, what are your people's capabilities without their suits? The EMP proved that we can't rely solely on technology. Mina considered the question. We're trained soldiers, combat proficiency, tactical awareness, physical conditioning above standard military norms. But without our suits, we're just human. We can support operations, provide infantry backup, run reconnaissance. But we can't fight Kaiju directly. What about your hybrid? Can he transform again? Kafka's recovering, but yes. His regeneration works even in human form, just slower. Give him a few hours, and he'll be combat ready. Hours we don't have, Hansen muttered, looking at the holographic display where the Category 4s continued their ominous circling. They're waiting for something. The precursors don't waste resources on intimidation. They're planning their next move. Sashiro Hashina entered the command center, his usual casual demeanor replaced by professional focus. Captain, I've completed the personnel assessment. 43 soldiers sustained injuries during the EMP evacuation. Mostly minor, nothing that will keep them out of action. 212 combat suits were abandoned in the water. Konomi's team managed to retrieve 15 that were still functional. The rest are either too damaged or too deep to salvage safely. 15 suits, Mina repeated, against 3 Category 4 Kaiju and a Category 5 that could disable technology at will. The math was brutal. There's something else, Hashina continued. Some of our people are struggling. They're realizing they might never go home. Morale is fragile. Mina nodded slowly. It was the unspoken fear underlying everything. Not just the immediate danger, but the existential horror of being permanently severed from their reality. Gather the division leaders. I need to address everyone. 20 minutes later, 300 JDF soldiers assembled in the Shatterdome's main hangar, their faces reflecting varying degrees of shock, fear, and determination. They'd been given temporary PPDC fatigues to replace their damaged uniforms, making them look like refugees rather than elite soldiers. Which, Mina supposed grimly, was exactly what they were. She stood before them, flanked by Marshal Hansen and her division leaders, and felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a physical thing. I won't lie to you, Mina began, her voice carrying across the silent hangar. The situation is dire. We're trapped in another world, fighting an enemy we barely understand, with limited equipment and no clear path home. Some of you are thinking about families left behind. Some are wondering if this is a nightmare you'll wake up from. Some are already planning how to survive in this new reality. She paused, making eye contact with soldiers throughout the crowd. All of those reactions are valid. This isn't what any of us signed up for. But here's what I know. We are the Japan Defense Force. For 50 years, we've stood between Kaiju and the people who couldn't protect themselves. That mission doesn't change just because we're in a different world. These people, the PPDC, the civilians of Hong Kong, everyone in this reality, they're facing the same threat we've fought our entire careers. They need help. And we're here. Captain Narumi stepped forward. What are your orders, Captain? We integrate with PPDC operations. Share our tactical knowledge, our combat experience, everything we've learned fighting Kaiju. We may not have our suits, but we have expertise that could save lives. And when we get our chance, when Kafka is recovered and we have assets ready, we're going to help them finish what they started 6 months ago. The breach assault. Someone called out from the crowd. Yes. Marshal Hansen's people tried to close the dimensional rift and failed because they didn't have enough force to fight through the defenses. But they've never fought alongside 300 JDF soldiers and a Kaiju human hybrid before. We're going to give them that chance. Marshal Hansen looked surprised, then considering. Captain, that's a suicide mission. The defensive perimeter around the breach is designed to stop Jaegers, Mina interrupted. Large, predictable targets that move slowly and fight in pairs. It's not designed to stop a combined arms assault with infantry support, tactical flexibility, and an asset that reads as both Kaiju and human. We can do this, Marshal, but we need your cooperation. The hangar was silent as Hansen weighed the proposal. Finally, he nodded. If we're doing this, we do it right. Full integration, shared command structure, complete transparency. Your people train with mine, we share intelligence, and we plan this operation like our lives depend on it, because they do. Agreed, Mina said, then turned back to her soldiers. You all know what's at stake. This isn't our war, but it's become our responsibility. I won't order anyone to participate in the breach assault. That's a volunteer-only mission. But until then, we fight. We support. We do what we've always done. Questions? Kakoru Shinomiya raised her hand. Captain, what about getting home? Are we giving up on that? Never, Mina said firmly. Dr. Gottlieb and Dr. Geisler are working on understanding the dimensional rift. If there's a way back, we'll find it. But we can't focus on that while kaiju are threatening innocent lives. We save this world first. Then we worry about finding our own. The soldiers' expressions shifted, not to happiness, but to acceptance. They were being asked to fight an impossible battle in a foreign world with no guarantee of return. And they were going to do it anyway, because that's what the Defense Force did. As the assembly dispersed, Rino Ichikawa approached Mina quietly. Captain, I've been analyzing the PPDC's kaiju tracking data. The attack patterns, the escalation schedule, the targeting priorities. There's something the precursors are doing that doesn't match standard invasion strategy. Explain. They're not trying to win quickly. Every kaiju assault is calibrated to cause maximum damage while still being eventually defeatable by Jaegers. It's like they're testing, gathering data. Each kaiju is an experiment to see what works and what doesn't. Mina frowned. You're saying this has been a research project? More like preparation. They're learning everything about Earth's defenses, adapting their kaiju to counter specific tactics, and slowly escalating until they find the exact combination that can't be stopped. And Captain, based on the progression curves, they're almost done. The next wave of kaiju won't be Category 5s. They'll be something beyond that classification entirely. How long do we have? Reno's expression was grim. Days. Maybe a week. The precursors were already close to their endgame. Our arrival, specifically Kafka's unique biology, just accelerated their timeline. They're going to want to study him, analyze him, and engineer countermeasures before launching their final assault, which meant the clock was ticking not just on the breach assault, but on their entire survival. In the medical bay, Kafka Hibino lay on an examination table, while PPDC doctors performed scans that looked both fascinated and disturbed by his physiology. His wounds from the Category 5 fight were nearly healed. Blue cellular regeneration visible beneath his skin like bioluminescent veins. How long until I can transform again? He asked the doctor. A woman named Chun, who'd worked with kaiju biology for years, but had never seen anything like him. Your body is recovering at an exponential rate, Dr. Chun replied, checking displays that showed cellular activity far beyond human norms. Based on current regeneration speeds, you should be combat capable within 6 hours. But Mr. Hibino, I have to ask, how does it feel? The transformation. Kafka was quiet for a moment, like being two people at once. The human side knows tactics, feels fear, understands consequences. The kaiju side just wants to fight, to protect territory, to establish dominance. During the battle, when I went full release, the kaiju side got stronger. It was harder to stay in control. The dimensional displacement might be affecting your hybrid stability, Dr. Chin suggested. Different universal constants, altered energy states. Your transformation draws on principles that might not translate perfectly to this reality. Great, Kafka muttered. So I'm even more unpredictable than usual. Actually, Dr. Chin smiled slightly, it might be an advantage. The precursors designed their kaiju based on predictable biological models. You're chaos to their order. That scares them. Through the medical bay's windows, Kafka could see the Shadowdome's main deployment deck, where Jaegers stood in their cradles like sleeping giants. He thought about the pilots who climbed into those machines, who linked their minds together and fought monsters that could level cities. They were brave, skilled, and dedicated. But they were also losing. The war against the precursors had been going on for over a decade, and humanity was slowly being ground down. More kaiju, stronger kaiju, smarter kaiju. Each wave a little worse than the last. The Jaegers had been a revolutionary answer to an impossible problem, but revolution only worked once. After that, the enemy adapted. Dr. Chun, Kafka said quietly, when I'm recovered, I need to talk to Marshal Hansen. I have an idea. What kind of idea? Kafka's eyes flickered blue for just a moment. The kaiju sighed, rising close to the surface. A crazy one. The kind that might actually work. Outside, night fell over Hong Kong, the city's lights creating a glowing barrier against the darkness of the ocean beyond. Somewhere in those depths, the breach pulsed with alien energy, a wound in reality that connected Earth to a hostile dimension. The precursors watched through their kaiju's eyes, analyzed data through their biological networks, and prepared their next move. They had faced Jaegers for years and learned to counter them. They had never faced the Japan Defense Force. And they had certainly never encountered Kafka Hibino. The war was about to change in ways neither side could fully predict. 6 hours later, Kafka walked into the PPDC strategic planning room looking fully recovered, though the faint blue veins still visible beneath his skin served as a reminder of what he truly was. Marshall Hansen, Mina Ashiro, the Jaeger pilots, and both PPDC scientists were gathered around a holographic tactical display showing the Pacific Ocean floor and the breach's location. Mr. Hibino, Marshall Hansen acknowledged. Dr. Chun says you're combat ready and that you have a proposal. I do, Kafka said, moving to stand beside the holographic display. But first, I need to understand something. When your previous breach assault failed, what exactly stopped you? It was Raleigh Beckett who answered, his voice carrying the weight of survivor's guilt. Defensive perimeter. The precursors had 3 Category 4s positioned in a triangle formation around the breach entrance. We couldn't get past them without taking catastrophic damage, and once we were engaged, a Category 5 emerged from the breach itself. We were pinned between 4 kaiju in an environment where Jaegers have limited mobility. 2 miles deep, Mako Mori added quietly. Water pressure at that depth affects Jaeger response time. Every movement requires more power, more compensation for hydraulic resistance. We were fighting at 60% efficiency. Kafka nodded slowly, his analytical mind, the part that had studied kaiju behavior for years as a cleanup crew member, processing the tactical scenario. The precursors used the environment against you, made you fight on their terms in conditions that favored kaiju biology over mechanical engineering. Exactly, Dr. Gottlieb confirmed. Kaiju are designed for deep water operation. Their organic systems aren't affected by pressure the way our technology is. It's a deliberate defensive advantage. So the question becomes, Kafka said, how do we turn that advantage against them? He manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on the breach's position. The precursors expect Jaegers. They've engineered their entire defense around stopping large, slow-moving mechanical targets. But what if we don't send Jaegers first? Mina leaned forward, understanding beginning to dawn. You want to use the JDF as a vanguard. Not just JDF, Kafka corrected. Me. Specifically, me in full transformation, reading as a kaiju on their biological sensors. I approach the breach like I'm one of their units returning from a surface mission. The defensive kaiju won't immediately register me as a threat because I'll look like I belong there. That's insane, Chuck Hansen said flatly. You're talking about swimming 2 miles down into the most heavily defended location in the Pacific, surrounded by kaiju that could rip you apart, hoping they don't figure out you're not one of them. It's insane, Kafka agreed, but it might work. I felt the breach during the battle, felt the precursors' attention on me. They're curious about my hybrid nature, confused by it. That confusion is a weapon. If I can get close enough to the defensive perimeter before they realize I'm hostile, I can create an opening. Marshall Hansen studied the tactical display with the expression of a man calculating acceptable losses. An opening for what? For the real assault force, Mina said, seeing the complete picture now. Kafka draws the defensive kaiju out of position, engages them at close range where they can't ignore him. While they're focused on him, a combined Jaeger-JDF strike team moves in fast, plants the nuclear device, and extracts before the precursors can reorganize their defense. The JDF doesn't have functional suits anymore, Hansen pointed out. How do they operate at 2-mile depth without them? Sashiro Ashina, who'd been listening quietly from the back of the room, spoke up. We don't need all 300 personnel for this. We need specialists, maybe 20 soldiers, equipped with PPDC deep-sea gear, modified with what we can salvage from our suit technology. Small, mobile, able to support the Jaegers in ways Kaiju won't anticipate. Newton Geisler was practically vibrating with excitement. We could do it. Take the JDF suit's power cores, integrate them with our atmospheric diving systems, create hybrid gear that operates on both principles. It won't give you fortitude release levels of power, but it would make you significantly more effective than standard PPDC infantry. How long would the modifications take? Mina asked. 72 hours, maybe less if we prioritize speed over perfection. Dr. Gottlieb cleared his throat. There's another problem. The nuclear device needs a Kaiju biological signature to pass through the breach's dimensional filter. In our previous attempt, we used tissue samples from a deceased Category 4. But the precursors have presumably updated their security protocols. The signature might not work anymore. All eyes turned to Kafka. You want to use my biology, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Your cellular structure is unique, Gottlieb explained. Part human, part Kaiju, but also something entirely new. The breach's filter might not recognize it as a threat because it doesn't match their template for Earth organisms or precursor-engineered Kaiju. In theory, it could pass through undetected. In theory, Kafka repeated. And if the theory's wrong, then the device detonates prematurely. The breach remains open, and we've wasted our only chance to end this war. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the stakes. This wasn't just about one battle or one strategic objective. This was potentially the last opportunity to close the breach before the precursors launched whatever apocalyptic assault they were preparing. Reno Ichikawa stepped forward, tablet in hand. I've been modeling the approach vectors. If we time it right, we can use the tidal currents around the breach to mask our approach signature. The Kaiju defensive perimeter has blind spots, small gaps in sensor coverage where tidal movement creates noise in their biological tracking. It's only a few seconds window, but a fast enough team could exploit it. Which Jaegers do we deploy? Marshal Hansen asked, his tone suggesting he'd already committed to the plan despite its obvious dangers. Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka, Mina said immediately. Crimson Typhoon is too damaged, and we need Jaegers with proven deep-water combat capability and pilots who can adapt to unexpected situations. Raleigh and Mako exchanged glances, their brief drift connection allowing wordless communication. We're in, Raleigh said. Chuck Hansen looked at his father, their own drift-forged bond carrying years of fighting together, losing together, surviving together. The old man and I don't know how to quit, Chuck said with a cocky grin that didn't quite hide his tension. Besides, someone needs to make sure you amateurs don't screw this up. That's settled then, Marshal Hansen said. But we need to address the elephant in the room. Even if this works, even if we close the breach, what happens to you, Captain Ishiro? To the JDF? Dr. Gottlieb said the dimensional rift connecting your worlds is closing. If we succeed in our mission, you might be stranded here permanently. Mina had already considered this, had already made her peace with it during the long hours planning this operation. Our mission has always been protecting people from Kaiju threats. If we're stuck here, then this becomes our world to protect. We'll adapt. Some of my soldiers won't see it that way, Captain Narumi interjected. They have families, lives they were torn away from. You can't ask them to just accept permanent displacement. I'm not asking them to accept anything, Mina replied. I'm asking them to do their duty. After that, if there's a way home, we'll find it. But we don't abandon a world in crisis just because it's not ours. Kafka moved to the window, overlooking the Shatterdome's deployment deck. Below, technicians swarmed over Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka, performing repairs and upgrades in preparation for the assault. It reminded him of the Defense Forces motor pools back in Japan, the same organized chaos of people preparing for battle against impossible odds. There's something else we need to consider, Kafka said without turning around. The precursors are watching me. They've been analyzing my biology since the first battle. If I approach the breach, they're going to know it's a trap. So we make it a convincing trap, Sashiro suggested. Give them something they want more than security. Give them you, apparently injured, vulnerable, separated from your team. Make them think they can capture and study you. Using Kafka as bait, Mina said slowly. That's exceptionally dangerous. Everything about this plan is exceptionally dangerous, Sashiro countered. The question is whether it's the kind of dangerous that gets us killed or the kind that wins wars. Dr. Gottlieb manipulated the holographic display, running probability simulations. If Mr. Ibino can convince the precursors he's a wounded asset worth retrieving rather than an immediate threat, it would draw their defensive kaiju out of optimal positioning. The mathematics support it. Offensive repositioning to secure a high-value target creates exploitable gaps in perimeter coverage. I don't like it, Mina said flatly. Neither do I, Kafka agreed, finally turning from the window. But I didn't like becoming a kaiju either, and that turned out to be useful. Captain, you taught me that sometimes the best weapon is the one the enemy doesn't expect. Right now, I'm the weapon they don't know how to counter. The planning session stretched into the early morning hours, every detail scrutinized, every contingency considered. The assault plan took shape like a living thing, growing from rough concept to detailed operation. Phase 1. Infiltration **. Kafka approaches the breach in transformed state, mimicking injured kaiju behavior. Defensive perimeter kaiju move to investigate. Phase 2. Engagement **. Once defensive kaiju are out of position, Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka descend rapidly, supported by 20 JDF specialists in modified deep-sea gear. Phase 3. Distraction **. Kafka engages defensive kaiju at close range, preventing them from reorganizing. JDF specialists provide tactical support and threat disruption. Phase 4. Deployment **. Jaegers reach the breach entrance and deploy nuclear device with Kafka's biological signature. Phase 5. Extraction **. All forces withdraw to minimum safe distance before detonation. Breach collapses, severing Earth's connection to precursor dimension. It was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its execution requirements. Everything had to work perfectly, or everyone involved would die 2 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean. We have 72 hours to prepare, Marshal Hansen said as the meeting concluded. That means 72 hours to modify equipment, train combined operations, and coordinate the most complex assault in PPDC history. Questions. Kikoru Shinomiya raised her hand. Marshal, what happens if we encounter kaiju beyond Category 5 classification? The precursors know we're planning something. They could have prepared defenses we can't counter. It was the question everyone had been thinking, but no one wanted to voice. Then we adapt, Hansen said simply. We've been fighting this war long enough to know that no plan survives contact with the enemy. What matters is having people who can think on their feet, support each other, and do whatever it takes to complete the mission. I think we have those people. As the meeting dispersed, Reno pulled Kafka aside. You know you might not survive this, right? Even if the plan works perfectly, you'll be at the center of multiple kaiju trying to tear you apart while fighting at 2-mile depth in your transformed state. The physical stress alone. I know, Kafka said quietly. But Reno, I've been a kaiju for 3 years now. I've fought monsters, saved cities, and learned to live with being something that shouldn't exist. If there's any chance my existence can end this war for these people, I have to take it. That's very noble, Reno said dryly, but also very stupid. Kafka grinned, the same goofy grin that had somehow survived his transformation into a weapon of mass destruction. Yeah, well, stupid's kind of my specialty. Across the Shatterdome, similar conversations were happening as JDF soldiers and PPDC personnel began the difficult process of integration. Language barriers, cultural differences, and tactical philosophies all had to be navigated while preparing for an operation that could determine the fate of the world. In the Jaeger deployment bay, Mako Mori stood before Gypsy Danger, her hand resting on the massive machine's foot. Through the neural interface that would soon connect her to both the Jaeger and her co-pilot, she could almost feel the weight of what they were about to attempt. Raleigh joined her, standing in comfortable silence for a moment before speaking. Thinking about the last breach assault, Thinking about all the people we lost, Mako replied. Wondering if this time will be different. It will be. We have advantages they didn't. The JDF, Kafka, better intelligence on precursor defensive patterns. We're not going in blind. We're never truly blind, Mako said softly. The drift shows us everything. Every fear, every hope, every possibility. And right now what I see is a chance. Maybe the last one we'll get. In the medical bay, Dr. Chun was taking final tissue samples from Kafka, carefully storing them in specialized containers that would be used to code the nuclear device's biological signature. Each sample glowed with faint blue bioluminescence, a visible reminder of the unique biology that made this plan possible. You're nervous, Dr. Chun observed as she worked. Terrified, Kafka admitted. I've fought Kaiju before, but never underwater, never at depth, never as deliberate bait for creatures that were designed to be perfect killers. Then why do it? Kafka was quiet for a long moment. Because back in my world, I spent 10 years cleaning up after Kaiju battles. I saw the destruction, the bodies, the lives destroyed. When I became a Kaiju myself, I swore I'd use that power to prevent that destruction instead of just cleaning it up afterward. This is the ultimate version of that promise, using what I am to end the threat permanently. Dr. Chun smiled sadly. You're a good man, Kafka Hibino. I hope you survive to see the world you're fighting for. Me too, document me too. As the 72-hour countdown began, the Shatter Dome transformed into a hive of coordinated activity. Engineers worked alongside JDF technicians to modify deep-sea equipment. Pilots practiced coordinated maneuvers with soldiers who'd never operated with Jaegers before. Scientists refined the nuclear device and calculated detonation parameters. Everyone knew the stakes. And somewhere deep in the Pacific, the breach pulsed with alien energy, the precursors watching through their Kaiju's eyes, analyzing the unusual activity on the surface. They had fought humanity for over a decade and learned to predict every move. But they had never encountered an enemy willing to sacrifice everything to protect a world that wasn't even their own. The war was about to reach its climax, and only one side would survive to see what came after. 60 hours remained. The Shatter Dome had become a fusion of two worlds' military doctrines, and the results were both inspiring and chaotic. In the modified equipment bay, Newton Geisler and Konomi Okaneji worked side by side, their different approaches to technology creating unexpected synergies. Your suit power cores are insane, Newton said, examining a salvaged JDF energy cell with reverent fascination. The energy density alone violates about 6 laws of thermodynamics that I'm pretty sure are fundamental to this universe. Konomi adjusted her glasses, her analytical mind already 3 steps ahead. They operate on principles tied to human fortitude, the ability to channel mental and physical energy into the suit systems. It's not purely mechanical. There's a biological interface component. Like the drift, Newton realized. Neural connection between pilot and machine, except your suits connect to individual willpower instead of shared consciousness. That's why the energy output scales with the user's determination and training. Exactly. Which means when we modify your deep-sea equipment with our power cores, the effectiveness will depend on the operator's ability to channel that energy. Konomi pulled up schematics on her tablet. I'm recommending we select JDF personnel who've demonstrated the highest fortitude release percentages. They'll be able to maximize the hybrid equipment's potential. Already ahead of you, Newton grinned, pulling up his own list. I cross-referenced your personnel files with psychological profiles. We've got 20 candidates who combine high fortitude ratings with deep-sea combat aptitude and tactical flexibility. Well, 19 candidates and 1 person who technically doesn't exist in any database, but has a fortitude release of 96%. Captain Ishiro, Konomi said. It wasn't a question. She's leading the JDF contingent on the assault, isn't she? Yes. And before you ask, no, I cannot talk her out of it. I've tried. In the training facility, that same Captain Ishiro was currently demonstrating JDF close-quarters combat techniques to a mixed group of PPDC Rangers and JDF soldiers. Without her combat suit, she relied on pure skill, speed, and tactical awareness, qualities that translated across any battlefield. Kaiju have predictable strike patterns based on their biology, Mina explained, moving through a demonstration sequence. Limb length determines reach, joint articulation determines angle of attack, sensory organ placement determines blind spots. Your Jaegers use these principles at macro scale. We use them at micro scale. She gestured to Sashiro, who'd been assisting with the demonstration. Vice Captain Hashina specializes in blade work against Kaiju with enhanced armor plating. His technique prioritizes precision over power, finding the gaps, exploiting structural weaknesses. Sashiro drew his practice blades, regular steel rather than his specialized Kaiju cutting weapons, which had been lost with his suit. The key is understanding that you can't overpower a Kaiju. You have to be smarter, faster, more adaptable. Make them commit to an attack, then punish the opening. He moved through a kata that looked almost like a dance, each movement flowing into the next with liquid grace. The PPDC Rangers watched with professional appreciation. They'd seen skilled fighters before, but Sashiro's technique had been honed against opponents that could level cities. Question. One of the Rangers called out, "How does this scale when you're supporting Jaegers?" "We're talking about fighting alongside machines that are 300 feet tall." "Same principles, different application," Mina replied. "You're not trying to do the Jaeger's job. You're covering their blind spots, engaging targets they can't efficiently address, and providing tactical flexibility. A Jaeger is a hammer, devastating, powerful, but limited in versatility. You're a scalpel." Captain Narumi entered the training facility, his expression grim. "Captain Ishiro, we have a situation. The Category 4s that have been circling Hong Kong, they just changed behavior patterns." Everyone moved to the tactical display, where holographic markers showed the 3 Kaiju formations. Instead of maintaining their distant patrol pattern, all 3 were converging on a single point, the location where the JDF had first emerged into this world. "They're searching for something," Reno said, analyzing the movement vectors. "Systematic grid pattern, overlapping search radius, coordinated timing. They're looking for traces of the dimensional rift." Dr. Gottlieb's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain Ishiro, Marshal Hansen, you need to see this immediately. The precursors are adapting faster than we anticipated." In the science lab, Hermann Gottlieb had arrays of monitoring equipment focused on the Kaiju formations. But what caught everyone's attention was the holographic projection showing cellular samples from the Category 5 that had fought Kafka. "I've been analyzing the tissue samples we recovered during the battle," Gottlieb explained, his words tumbling over each other with nervous energy. The Category 5 wasn't just scanning Mr. Hibino during their engagement, it was sampling him. Microscopic biological probes, so small our sensors barely detected them, extracted cellular material during the fight. Kafka felt his blood run cold. "They have my DNA? Not just your DNA, they have a complete biological profile. Cellular structure, energy signature, transformation mechanics, regeneration factors. Everything that makes you unique." "Which means," Newton finished grimly, "they can engineer countermeasures. Or worse, they can try to replicate it." Marshal Hansen's jaw clenched. "How long until they can deploy anti-Hibino Kaiju? Based on precursor engineering timelines from previous adaptations? 36 to 48 hours. They're fast, but creating something entirely new still requires development time." "That's before our assault window," Mina said. "If we wait for the full 72 hours for equipment modifications, we'll be facing Kaiju specifically designed to counter Kafka. But if we go early, we go with incomplete equipment and less preparation," Marshal Hansen countered. "It's a calculated risk either way." The tactical display updated, showing new data from PPDC satellite monitoring. The breach was exhibiting increased energy signatures, not enough to indicate an imminent Kaiju emergence, but enough to suggest significant activity on the precursor side. "They're building something," Reno said quietly. "They know we're planning a counteroffensive. They're preparing their response." Kafka moved to the window overlooking the deployment bay, watching technicians swarm over Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka. Both Jaegers were being fitted with enhanced deep-water propulsion systems, reinforced armor plating, and the modified equipment needed to carry the nuclear device. "We move up the timeline," Kafka said. 48 hours instead of 72. "That's insane," Chuck Hansen protested. "We'll be going in with half-finished equipment modifications and incomplete training integration. We'll be going in before the precursors can deploy dedicated countermeasures," Kafka corrected. "Right now, their defensive kaiju are general-purpose models. Dangerous, but not specifically optimized to kill me or stop Jaegers. Give them another day, and that changes." Mina studied Kafka's face, seeing the determination there. "You're sure about this?" "No," Kafka admitted. "But I'm sure that waiting gives the precursors more advantage than it gives us. We have surprise, we have a solid plan, and we have combined capabilities they've never encountered. Those advantages expire if we give them time to adapt." Marshal Hansen looked around the room, gauging reactions from his key personnel. Raleigh and Mako nodded. They'd fought enough battles to recognize when tactical timing mattered more than perfect preparation. The scientists looked nervous, but didn't object. The JDF leadership maintained professional composure, though Mina could read the tension in their postures. "All right," Hansen said finally. "We accelerate the timeline. 48 hours to final deployment. Dr. Geisler, Dr. Gottlieb, prioritize the critical equipment modifications. Forget the nice-to-haves. Focus on must-haves. Captains Ashiro and Narumi, select your 20 best personnel and get them familiarized with the modified equipment. Jaeger teams, you've got 48 hours to integrate JDF tactical support into your combat protocols. Everyone else, prepare for the possibility that this goes sideways in ways we can't predict." As the meeting dispersed, Kikoru caught up with Kafka in the corridor. "You're volunteering to be bait for alien monsters in their home territory with less preparation time than originally planned. This is stupid even by your standards." Kafka smiled slightly. "You know me, I've always excelled at stupid." "I'm serious, Kafka. This isn't like our battles back home. We don't know the rules here, we don't understand the full extent of precursor capabilities, and you'll be completely isolated if things go wrong." "I know," Kafka said quietly. "But Kikoru, every hour we wait is an hour the precursors use to prepare their endgame. If they're building anti-hybrid kaiju, what happens when they're done? We lose our best advantage. And if they're preparing some kind of superweapon..." He shook his head. "We can't afford to play it safe." Kikoru was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Then don't die. That's an order from someone who's known you long enough to know you'll ignore it. But still, I'll do my best." Over the next 48 hours, the Shatter Dome transformed into a crucible of preparation. The modified deep-sea equipment took shape. Hybrid suits that combined PPDC pressure resistance with JDF power core efficiency. They weren't as powerful as full combat suits, but they could operate at 2-mile depth while providing enhanced strength, speed, and tactical capability. 20 JDF specialists trained relentlessly, learning to coordinate with Jaeger movements, adapt to deep-water combat conditions, and function as a cohesive unit in an environment that could kill them in seconds if their equipment failed. Captain Ashiro led her team through scenario after scenario, drilling them on communication protocols, emergency procedures, and tactical flexibility. They practiced coordinating with Jaeger movements using simulation programs that Newton had hastily coded. They studied precursor kaiju behavior patterns until they could predict attack sequences in their sleep. They pushed their bodies and minds to the limit, knowing that the mission would demand nothing less. In the Jaeger Bay, Raleigh and Mako spent hours in the drift, refining their neural handshake and integrating new tactical parameters. They practiced coordinating with small, fast-moving units, a combat style completely different from their usual Jaeger versus kaiju battles. In the drift, they could feel each other's concerns, hopes, and determination blending into a unified purpose. "This is different from anything we've done before," Mako's thoughts flowed through their connection. "Everything about this is different," Raleigh agreed mentally. "But that's our advantage. The precursors have never faced combined arms assault with this level of coordination. Stryker Eureka's pilots went through similar preparations, though Chuck and Herc Hansen's drift carried the additional weight of family bonds. Father and son, they'd survived battles that killed more experienced teams, and their neural synchronization was nearly perfect. The kid's crazy, Chuck thought during one training session, referring to Kafka. Brave and crazy aren't mutually exclusive, Herc's thoughts responded. Sometimes the craziest plans are the only ones that work. Dr. Chun conducted final medical examinations on Kafka, monitoring his hybrid physiology and ensuring his transformation capability was at peak efficiency. The blue veins beneath his skin pulsed with barely contained energy, his body adapting to this world's physical laws with disturbing speed. Your cellular regeneration has actually improved since arriving here, Dr. Chin noted. The dimensional displacement seems to have triggered adaptive evolution in your hybrid cells. You're becoming more stable, more efficient. Is that good or bad? Kafka asked. Both. Good because it means your transformation is less likely to fail under stress. Bad because it suggests your biology is actively adapting to optimize for this reality, which might make returning to your home dimension problematic. Kafka absorbed this information silently. Another bridge burning behind him. Another tie to his original world severing. He'd already accepted that he might never go home, but having it confirmed by medical science made it real in a way that tactical planning hadn't. 36 hours before deployment, the Category 4s suddenly withdrew from Hong Kong's waters, returning to the breach vicinity. PPDC monitoring showed all three Kaiju taking up defensive positions around the dimensional rift, their formations tighter and more coordinated than before. They know we're coming, Dr. Gottlieb said, studying the Kaiju movement patterns. The precursors have concluded that our recent activity indicates offensive preparation. Good, Marshal Hansen replied. Let them prepare. Let them position their defenses exactly where they expect us. Because we're not attacking the way they think we are. 24 hours before deployment, the nuclear device was completed, a compact fusion warhead coated with Kafka's biological signature and designed to pass through the breach's dimensional filter. Dr. Gottlieb had verified the signature in coding 17 times, terrified of the possibility that a single error could doom the entire mission. 12 hours before deployment, the assault team gathered for final briefing. 20 JDF specialists in modified deep-sea equipment, 2 Jaeger teams, support personnel, and 1 Kaiju human hybrid who would serve as bait for an alien intelligence that had been trying to conquer Earth for over a decade. Marshal Hansen stood before them, his weathered face showing every year of the war he'd been fighting. I'm not going to lie to you, Hansen began. This mission has a low probability of success and a high probability of casualties. We're assaulting the most heavily defended location in the Pacific Ocean, fighting an enemy that has more resources and better positioning than we do. By every conventional metric, this is a suicide mission. He paused, looking each team member in the eye. But conventional metrics don't account for what you represent. The PPDC has been fighting alone for years, using the same tactics, the same strategies, slowly losing ground to an enemy that learns from every battle. You, the JDF, Mr. Hibino, your variables the precursors can't predict. You're chaos in their ordered system. And chaos is exactly what we need. Mina stepped forward. For my people, this isn't our war or our world. We were brought here by accident, displaced from everything we knew. But the Defense Forces mission has always been protecting humanity from Kaiju threats. That mission doesn't change just because the Kaiju come from a different dimension. We're here, we're capable, and we're going to end this. Kafka was the last to speak, his voice quiet but carrying absolute conviction. I spent years cleaning up after Kaiju attacks, seeing the destruction they caused. When I became a Kaiju myself, I swore I'd use that power to prevent destruction, not cause it. Tomorrow, we have a chance to prevent every future Kaiju attack on this world. That's worth any risk. The briefing concluded with final equipment checks and personal preparations. Soldiers wrote letters they hoped would never be delivered. Pilots made peace with mortality. Scientists ran last-minute calculations. Everyone dealt with pre-mission anxiety in their own way. 6 hours before deployment, Mina found Kafka standing alone in the Jaeger deployment bay, looking up at Gypsy Danger's massive frame. "Second thoughts?" she asked. "Constant thoughts," Kafka replied. "But not about the mission. About what happens after. If we succeed, if we survive, what then? Do we try to find a way home? Do we build new lives here? Do we?" "We survive first," Mina interrupted gently. "Everything else is secondary." "I know. It's just, I never expected my life to go this way. Cleaning crew to Kaiju to interdimensional warrior. It's a strange path." "Strange paths often lead to important destinations," Mina said. "You've saved countless lives, Kafka. In both worlds now. That matters." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two soldiers contemplating the battle ahead. "Captain," Kafka said finally, "if I don't make it back." "You will. But if I don't, tell everyone, tell them being a kaiju was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it let me matter. It let me make a difference." Mina's expression softened. "Tell them yourself. After we close the breach and save this world." 3 hours before deployment, the final equipment was loaded. The nuclear device was secured in Gypsy Danger's chest cavity, its biological signature pulsing with faint blue light, Kafka's light. The modified deep-sea suits were distributed to the JDF specialists. Final system checks confirmed all equipment was functioning within acceptable parameters. 1 hour before deployment, Raleigh Beckett and Mako Mori climbed into Gypsy Danger's con pod and initiated their neural handshake. The drift connected them, their minds merging into the unified consciousness that would pilot the Jaeger through the most dangerous mission of their lives. Chuck and Herc Hansen did the same in Striker Eureka, father and son becoming one warrior in machine form. The 20 JDF specialists checked each other's equipment one final time, following pre-mission protocols that had been drilled into them through years of Defense Force service. And Kafka Hibino stood on the deployment deck, feeling the kaiju power inside him rising to the surface, ready to transform, ready to fight, ready to end this war. Marshal Hansen's voice came over the Shatterdome's intercom system, broadcast to every person involved in the operation. "All teams, this is Marshal Hansen. Final authorization for Operation Deep Breach is confirmed. Primary objective: close the breach permanently. Secondary objective: eliminate precursor defensive capability. Tertiary objective: everyone comes home alive. The world is watching. Make them proud. Deploy in 30 minutes. 30 minutes until humanity's last, best chance to end the war. 30 minutes until the breach assault began." The deployment sequence began with controlled precision that belied the chaos about to unfold. Kafka stood at the edge of the Shatterdome's ocean deployment platform, the Pacific stretching before him like a dark mirror reflecting the night sky. Behind him, the mechanical symphony of Jaeger deployment echoed through the massive facility. Hydraulic systems engaging, power cores spinning up, neural bridges activating. He closed his eyes and felt the transformation beginning. Not the sudden, violent shift of combat transformation, but a gradual, controlled release. Blue energy rippled across his skin like bioluminescent waves, his human form expanding, restructuring, becoming something that existed in the impossible space between man and monster. Within 30 seconds, Kaiju number 8 stood 70 feet tall on the deployment platform, his hybrid form glowing with contained power. Through his transformed senses, the world became sharper, more vivid. He could taste the salt in the air, feel the pressure differentials in the atmosphere, sense the electromagnetic signatures of the Jaegers preparing behind him. And deeper, much deeper, he felt the breach, a wound in reality that pulsed with alien rawness. "Kafka," Mina's voice came through the communication system, transmitted directly to his enhanced hearing. "Vitals are stable. Transformation holding at optimal efficiency. You're cleared for deployment." He turned his massive head, looking back at the Shatterdome where his team prepared. Through the deployment bay's opening, he could see Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka moving into position, their metal forms catching the facility's lights. Around their feet, 20 JDF specialists in modified deep-sea equipment looked like toys compared to the Jaeger's immense scale. But Kafka had learned long ago that size wasn't everything. Courage, skill, and determination could make even the smallest fighter a titan. Beginning approach, Kafka transmitted back, his voice distorted by his kaiju vocal cords, but still recognizably his own. "See you on the other side, Captain." "Don't be late," Mina replied, and he could hear the tension beneath her professional tone. Kafka dove into the Pacific Ocean, his transformed body cutting through the water with fluid grace. Unlike true kaiju, he retained human tactical awareness. He didn't just swim. He calculated optimal approach vectors, conserved energy, and maintained situational awareness. The ocean around him darkened as he descended, sunlight fading to twilight, then to absolute darkness, broken only by his own bioluminescence. 100 feet deep, 200, 500. At 1,000 feet, the pressure would have crushed an unprotected human instantly. For Kafka, it was merely resistance to be overcome. His kaiju physiology adapted automatically, his cellular structure reinforcing to withstand forces that could crumple submarines. 1,500 feet. The darkness was now complete, a void that would have been disorienting without his enhanced senses. He could feel thermal currents, detect vibrations through the water, sense electromagnetic fields generated by living creatures. And he could feel the kaiju, 3 Category 4s in defensive formation around the breach, exactly where PPDC intelligence had predicted. They weren't moving, weren't hunting. They were waiting, patient as statues, for intruders that would never reach their objective. Or so the precursors believed. 2,000 feet. Kafka's enhanced vision adapted to the pressure and darkness, processing available light in ways impossible for human or conventional kaiju biology. He could see the ocean floor, now, a vast expanse of sediment and rock formations that had never seen sunlight. And there, glowing with eerie blue bioluminescence, was the breach. It looked like a wound in the ocean floor, a vertical tear in reality approximately 300 feet across, pulsing with energies that made Kafka's hybrid nature recoil instinctively. Through that opening, he could sense the precursor dimension beyond, a place where the rules of Earth biology didn't apply, where kaiju were manufactured rather than born. The 3 Category 4 kaiju were positioned in a perfect triangle formation around the breach, each one facing outward to detect approaching threats. They were massive, easily matching Kafka's size, with armored hides designed to withstand Jaeger weapons and sensory arrays optimized for detecting mechanical signatures. But they weren't looking for a kaiju approaching from above. Kafka began his deception, mimicking the movement patterns he'd observed in injured kaiju from dozens of battles back in Japan. He let his bioluminescence flicker irregularly, simulating damaged bioorganic systems. He moved with exaggerated slowness, as if struggling against the depth pressure. He allowed himself to drift slightly off course, the way a wounded creature might. The nearest Category 4 kaiju's head turned, its multiple eyes focusing on the approaching figure. Through the water, Kafka felt the creature's biological sensors scanning him. The kaiju was confused. The approaching entity read as kaiju on biological signatures, but the energy patterns were wrong, unfamiliar. The precursor's programming didn't have a category for friendly hybrid. The Category 4 transmitted a challenge signal, a subsonic pulse that demanded identification. Kafka responded with the one thing he'd learned from his connection to the breach during the previous battle. He mimicked the harmonic signature of precursor kaiju returning from surface missions. It wasn't perfect. His hybrid nature corrupted the signal, but it was close enough to create hesitation. The Category 4 advanced cautiously, closing the distance to investigate the anomaly. Its companion kaiju maintained position, following defensive protocols that prioritize perimeter security over individual curiosity. Perfect. Kafka let the Category 4 approach to within 50 feet, close enough to scan him thoroughly, close enough to transmit detailed biological data back to the precursors, close enough to strike. The transformation had always been about more than just size and strength. It was about speed, precision, and the element of surprise. Kafka moved from feigned injury to full combat capacity in less than a second. his clawed hand driving toward the Category 4's primary sensory cluster with surgical accuracy. The kaiju screamed, a sound that traveled through water as both vibration and pressure wave. Kafka's strike had been precise, destroying 3 of the creature's 6 eyes and rupturing its primary electromagnetic sensor. The Category 4 thrashed, not mortally wounded, but definitely compromised. The other 2 Category 4s responded instantly, abandoning their defensive positions to converge on the threat. Their movements were coordinated, disciplined. These weren't mindless beasts. They were soldiers following tactical doctrine. Kafka didn't fight them. Fighting meant getting pinned down, getting surrounded, giving the precursors time to deploy additional assets from the breach. Instead, he did what he'd come here to do. He drew them away from their optimal positioning. He grabbed the wounded Category 4, using its massive body as a shield against the incoming attackers, and kicked off the ocean floor with enough force to create a pressure wave that displaced thousands of tons of water. The upward trajectory took him and his struggling captive 200 feet higher, pulling the defensive perimeter apart. The 2 intact Category 4s followed, because that's what they were programmed to do: eliminate threats to the breach, protect precursor assets, maintain defensive integrity at all costs. They just abandoned their defensive integrity to pursue a single target. Above, Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka hit the water in controlled deployment dives, their massive forms descending rapidly with precision that belied their size. Behind them, 20 JDF specialists in modified deep-sea equipment followed in tight formation. Inside Gypsy Danger's conpod, Raleigh and Mako were locked in perfect drift synchronization, their combined consciousness piloting the Jaeger through descent parameters that would have been impossible for a single mind to process. Depth 1,500 feet, Mako's voice echoed through their shared awareness. Kafka has engaged defensive perimeter. Window opening. Acknowledged. Raleigh's thoughts merged with hers. Striker confirmed position. Right behind you, Gypsy. Chuck Hansen's voice came through the inter-Jaeger communication. Through the drift, Raleigh could feel Mako's awareness of Chuck and Herc's neural handshake in Striker Eureka, a separate consciousness moving in parallel. 2 minds and 2 machines working toward one objective. Captain Ishiro's voice joined the tactical network, her tone carrying absolute command authority despite the chaos. JDF team, maintain formation Delta 7. We're entering the engagement zone in 30 seconds. Remember your training, support the Jaegers, harass targets of opportunity, and stay mobile. The moment you stop moving at this depth, you're dead. Understood, Captain, came 19 simultaneous responses. The assault team descended through water that grew darker and colder with every passing second. At 1,800 feet, the modified deep-sea equipment began registering pressure warnings. They were operating at the absolute edge of safe parameters, and they hadn't even reached combat depth yet. Sashiro Hashina checked his suit's power core status, seeing the JDF technology struggling to maintain full efficiency in this alien environment. His fortitude release capacity was reduced to approximately 70% of normal, still formidable, but a significant degradation from his usual capability. Vice Captain, one of his blade specialists transmitted, power cores are showing thermal stress. The hybrid systems aren't fully compatible with deep water operation. Acknowledged, Sashiro replied. We knew the equipment was experimental. Compensate by reducing sustained power draw, short bursts only, conserve energy between engagements. 2,000 feet. The ocean floor came into view, illuminated by the eerie blue glow of the breach. The dimensional rift looked even more alien at this depth, a tear in reality that pulsed with energies that hurt to look at directly. And surrounding it, chaos. Kafka was fighting 2 Category 4 Kaiju simultaneously while hauling the wounded third as a combination shield and weapon. His hybrid nature gave him advantages the precursors hadn't anticipated. He could regenerate damage almost as fast as he took it, adapt his fighting style mid-combat, and maintain tactical awareness that pure Kaiju biology couldn't match. But he was also struggling. 2-mile depth meant fighting against both the Kaiju and the environment. Every movement required more energy, Every strike had to account for water resistance. Every tactical decision had to factor in the pressure trying to crush him. One of the Category 4s managed to clamp its jaws on Kafka's shoulder, teeth designed to penetrate Jaeger armor, finding purchase in his hybrid flesh. Blue blood, his blood, dispersed into the water like luminescent clouds. Then Gypsy Danger arrived, 300 feet of mechanical precision moving through the water with determined purpose. The Jaeger's massive fist, reinforced for deep water operation, and carrying the kinetic energy of controlled descent, slammed into the biting Category 4 skull with devastating force. The Kaiju released Kafka and turned to face this new threat, its programming recognizing the familiar profile of a Jaeger, an enemy it had been designed to destroy. Kafka extract. Mina's voice cut through the tactical channel. Jaegers are taking over engagement. Get clear. But Kafka saw what Mina couldn't from her position above. The breach was pulsing with increased energy. Something was coming through. Not reinforcements, not yet, but something worse. A scanning pulse. Biological reconnaissance. The precursors weren't just defending, they were studying the assault team, analyzing their tactics, cataloging their capabilities for future countermeasures. Every second the battle continued was another second of intelligence gathering for an enemy that had turned adaptation into an art form. Negative, Captain, Kafka transmitted, his voice strained with effort and pain. The breach is scanning us. We need to deploy the device now, before they gather enough data to counter it. Inside Gypsy Danger's Conpod, Raleigh and Mako felt the truth of Kafka's warning through their enhanced sensory systems. The breach's energy signature was shifting, becoming more focused, more directed. The precursors were watching. He's right. Mako's thoughts flowed through the drift. We can't wait for optimal positioning. We deploy now or risk mission compromise. Raleigh's consciousness merged with hers in agreement. Stryker, cover our approach. We're making the run. Copy that, Gypsy. Herc Hansen's voice was steady, carrying decades of combat experience. We'll keep the Kaiju busy. Make it count. Stryker Eureka engaged the two Category 4s with aggressive precision, the Jaeger's signature speed allowing it to strike from unexpected angles despite the water resistance. Electrical charges from its sting blasters coursed through the water, creating localized electromagnetic fields that disrupted the Kaiju's biological sensors. The JDF specialists swarmed around the battlefield like coordinated hornets, their modified equipment allowing mobility the Kaiju couldn't match. Kakaru Shinomiya led a team targeting one Category 4's sensory organs, using precision strikes to blind and disorient the massive creature. Reno Ichikawa coordinated sensor jamming, deploying countermeasures designed to confuse Kaiju electromagnetic detection. Captain Ashiro moved with deadly grace despite the crushing depth, her 96% fortitude release pushing the hybrid equipment to its absolute limits. She targeted the wounded category for that Kafka had initially engaged, recognizing it as the weakest link in the defensive formation. 1st Division concentrated fire on the wounded Kaiju's leg joints, she commanded. Immobilize it, remove it from the tactical equation. Energy weapons designed to damage Fortitude 8 Kaiju back in Japan discharged in coordinated volleys, each strike precisely targeted at already weakened points in the Category 4's armor. The Kaiju roared and turned to swat at its smaller attackers, exactly the distraction Mina had intended. Gypsy Danger moved past the engagement, its massive form cutting through the water toward the breach. The dimensional rift grew larger in their vision, the pulsing blue energy seeming to beckon and repel simultaneously. Preparing device deployment, Mako's voice was calm through the drift. Raleigh, I'm detecting additional energy signatures in the breach. Something's. The ocean exploded with motion as something massive emerged from the dimensional rift. It wasn't another Category 4. It wasn't even a Category 5. This was something the PPDC had never encountered before, a Kaiju that pushed past every classification system they developed. It was easily twice the size of the Category 5 that had fought Kafka previously, with armor plating that looked more mechanical than organic and bioweapons that defied traditional Kaiju morphology. Dr. Gottlieb's panic voice burst through the communication channels from the Shatterdome. Impossible energy readings. That signature is off the scale. Category. Category 6? We don't even have a classification for this. The massive kaiju regarded the battle with intelligence that was distinctly, terrifyingly alien. Then it opened its mouth and released a sonic pulse that traveled through the water like a physical shockwave. Every piece of electronic equipment in the combat zone experienced catastrophic disruption. The JDF specialists' hybrid suits flickered and died. Jaeger systems crashed and began emergency reboots. Communication channels went dead. In the sudden silence, with only analog backup systems functioning, the assault team found themselves exactly where the precursors wanted them, blind, deaf, and surrounded. The Category 6 Kaiju moved toward Gypsy Danger with deliberate purpose, recognizing the nuclear device in the Jaeger's chest cavity. The precursors had been expecting this assault all along, and they'd prepared the perfect trap. Darkness swallowed the battlefield, not the darkness of depth, but the darkness of dead systems, severed connections, and technology rendered useless by an enemy that understood human dependence on it. Inside Gypsy Danger's conpod, Raleigh and Mako felt their neural handshake flicker and destabilize as primary systems crashed. The drift connection, that perfect union of consciousness that made them one with their Jaeger, began to fragment, leaving them feeling suddenly, terrifyingly alone in their own minds. Emergency reboot initiated. The Jaeger's automated systems announced in a flat, emotionless voice. Neural bridge offline. Estimated restoration time, 90 seconds. 90 seconds they didn't have. The Category 6 Kaiju moved through the water with horrifying grace for something so massive. Its biomechanical armor plating gleaming with bioluminescent patterns that looked deliberately designed rather than evolutionarily developed. It was a weapon given form, a testament to precursor engineering at its most terrifying apex. Kafka saw the situation deteriorating in real time. The JDF specialists were floundering in dead equipment, their hybrid suits reduced to expensive coffins at 2-mile depth. Striker Eureka had gone completely dark, its systems overwhelmed by the sonic pulse. Gypsy Danger was rebooting, but defenseless, the nuclear device in its chest cavity now exposed to a kaiju that clearly understood its purpose. He made a decision that would have been called insane by any rational analysis. He attacked the Category 6 alone. Kafka launched himself from the ocean floor with every ounce of strength his hybrid form could generate, closing the distance to the massive kaiju in seconds. He wasn't trying to win, he was trying to buy time, to create a window for the systems to reboot, for his team to recover. He hit the Category 6 with the force of a kinetic missile, his clawed hands finding purchase on its armored hide. The impact should have staggered the creature, should have at least diverted its attention. The Category 6 didn't even slow down. Instead, it reached up with appendages that moved too fast for something so large, grabbed Kafka by his torso, and squeezed. Kafka felt his ribs crack, felt his hybrid regeneration struggling to repair damage as fast as it was being inflicted. Blue blood, so much blood, clouded the water around them. Through the pain, through the crushing pressure both external and internal, Kafka understood something terrible. This kaiju had been engineered specifically for this moment. The precursors had taken every piece of data they'd gathered from previous encounters, analyzed Jaeger capabilities, studied his hybrid nature, and created the perfect counter. This wasn't a defensive unit. This was an execution machine. Kafka. Captain Ishiro's voice cut through the water, raw and desperate. Her hybrid suit was dead, reduced to emergency life support only, but she could still see through the suit's passive optics. Disengage. You can't. Kafka cut her off with a transmission that burned the last of his suit communication reserves. Captain, tell my team. Tell everyone being a kaiju best thing that ever. The Category 6 grip tightened further, and Kafka's transmission cut to static. But 70 feet below, something remarkable was happening. The JDF specialists, their powered systems dead, were doing what Defense Force soldiers had always done when technology failed. They adapted. Sashiro Hashina manually released his suit's chest plate, abandoning the dead equipment entirely. The pressure at 2-mile depth should have killed him instantly. Human bodies weren't designed to withstand forces that could compress submarines into scrap metal. Should have killed him. Would have killed him, if not for one factor the precursors hadn't accounted for. Fortitude release didn't require technology. It was the channeling of human will into physical capability, the transformation of determination into power. And Sashiro Hashina had been training his entire adult life to push past human limitations. He released his fortitude to 96%, then passed it into the danger zone of 98%, his body reinforcing at the cellular level to withstand impossible pressure. It was enough to let him swim freely or fight effectively, but it was enough to survive, to move, to matter. Around him, 19 other JDF specialists made the same insane decision. They abandoned their dead suits, released their fortitude to maximum levels, and transformed themselves into weapons through sheer determination and decades of training. Captain Ashiro hit 98% fortitude release and felt her body protesting, every cell screaming warnings about unsustainable energy expenditure. She ignored the warnings. She'd spent her entire career ignoring warnings in service of protecting others. All personnel, she transmitted through a backup analog communicator salvaged from her abandoned suit. Her voice strained but clear. Emergency Protocol Omega. We engage with everything we have. No technology, no advantages, just us and our training. Show these aliens what the Defense Force really is. The 20 soldiers moved through 2-mile deep water with speed that defied physics and biology both. They weren't as fast as their suits would have made them, weren't as strong, but they were mobile, they were coordinated, and they were absolutely furious. Hikaru Shinomiya reached the Category 6 first, carrying a blade she'd salvaged from her abandoned suit. At 2-mile depth, with 97% fortitude release, she drove that blade into what her tactical training identified as a sensory nerve cluster at the base of the Kaiju's skull. The Category 6 flinched, just slightly, just enough. Enough for Kafka to break one arm free. His hybrid regeneration, pushed past all sustainable limits, was beginning to fail. Blue energy flickered across his form like a dying light. His transformation was collapsing under the combined stress of damage, depth pressure, and energy depletion. But Kaiju number 8 had never been just about power. It had been about will. Kafka drove his freed claw toward the Category 6 primary eye cluster, aiming for the organs that would hurt most, that would disrupt the creature's ability to function. His strike connected, tearing through specialized armor plating, rupturing sensory organs that had cost the precursors months of development. The Category 6 screamed, a sound that carried through the water, as both vibration and electromagnetic pulse. Its grip on Kafka loosened reflexively, biological programming overriding tactical doctrine in response to critical damage. Kafka fell, his transformation finally failing completely. Blue energy dispersed into the dark water as his 70-foot Kaiju form collapsed back into human dimensions. Kafka Hibino, just a man again, began sinking toward the ocean floor 2 miles below the surface. Captain Narumi caught him. The 1st Division commander had pushed his fortitude release to 99%, a level considered lethal, where the human body began cannibalizing itself to generate power. But at 99%, with decades of combat experience guiding his movements, Narumi could move through deep water carrying a drowning man while simultaneously coordinating his division's assault on a kaiju larger than most buildings. "I've got him," Narumi transmitted. "Someone cover our extraction." "Negative on extraction," came Rino Ichikawa's voice, strained with effort but analytically precise. "The Category 6 is adapting. It's learning from our attacks in real time. Every second we spend fighting it is another second it becomes more effective at killing us." "Then what do you suggest?" Narumi demanded, kicking toward the surface with Kafka's unconscious form. "We don't fight it. We bypass it completely." Above them, Gypsy Danger Systems completed their reboot sequence. The Neuro Bridge reconnected, slamming Raleigh and Mako back into the drift with jarring intensity. Through their combined consciousness, they felt everything. The JDF specialists fighting at impossible depths with nothing but their bodies and determination. Kafka's transformation failure. The Category 6 repositioning to defend the breach. The other Category 4s recovering from Striker Eureka's assault. They felt the mission hanging by a thread so fine it might snap at any moment. Mako. Raleigh's thoughts merged with hers in the drift. We're not getting a better opportunity than this. The Category 6 is focused on the JDF. The other Kaiju are scattered. If we move now, we abandon our support team to certain death. Mako's consciousness finished a thought. They hung in that moment of decision. Two minds unified, but facing a choice that would define them. Complete the mission and sacrifice the people who'd made it possible, or protect those people and lose humanity's last chance to close the breach. Then a third consciousness touched their drift, something that shouldn't have been possible. Kafka Hibino, human and unconscious, somehow extended his awareness into Gypsy Danger's neural bridge. The connection was weak, fragmentary, maybe only possible because of his hybrid nature and proximity to the Jaeger systems. But it was enough to transmit a single crystalline thought. End it. Whatever it costs. End the war. The decision made, Raleigh and Mako moved Gypsy Danger, with purpose born of absolute conviction. The Jaeger surged forward, past the Category 6, past the recovering Category 4s, directly toward the breach. The dimensional rift grew in their vision, filling their enhanced sensors with impossible readings, quantum fluctuations, dimensional instabilities, energies that defied known physics. The opening was 300 feet across, pulsing with blue light that came from somewhere beyond Earth's reality. Deploying nuclear device. Mako's voice was steady through the drift. Biological signature confirmed. Kafka's DNA is active and recognized by the breach's dimensional filter. The weapon, humanity's desperate gambit, powered by the biological signature of a man who existed between two states of being, detached from Gypsy Danger's chest cavity and began descending toward the breach's opening. The Category 6 recognized what was happening. It released the JDF specialists it had been fighting and turned with terrible speed, moving to intercept the falling weapon. It might have succeeded if not for Striker Eureka. Chuck and Herkansen had forced their Jaeger systems through the fastest emergency reboot in PPDC history, bypassing safety protocols and accepting catastrophic damage risks to get their weapons online 30 seconds early. Striker Eureka's plasma cannon, operating at 60% capacity and unstable power distribution, fired directly into the Category 6 path. The shot didn't stop the massive kaiju, didn't even significantly damage it, but it did something more important. It disrupted the creature's trajectory by exactly 14 feet. 14 feet that put the nuclear device out of the Category 6 intercept range. The weapon descended into the breach, passing through the dimensional membrane without resistance. Kafka's biological signature, human and kaiju, Earth and something beyond, confused the precursor filters that would have rejected any purely mechanical or purely biological intrusion. For one frozen moment, nothing happened. Then Dr. Gottlieb's voice burst through the restored communication channels, triumph mixing with terror. Device has passed through. Its reading as deployed in the precursor dimension. Detonation in 10 seconds. All units, maximum evacuation velocity. Marshal Hansen's roar carried across all channels. Get clear of the breach now. Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka kicked off the ocean floor simultaneously, their combined thrust creating pressure waves that displaced megatons of water. The JDF specialists, still operating on fortitude release that should have killed them, followed with every remaining ounce of strength. Captain Ashiro grabbed two soldiers whose fortitude release had dropped to dangerous levels, pulling them upward with strength born of desperation. Sashiro did the same, his 98% release beginning to fail, but holding just long enough to matter. The Category 6 understood what was about to happen. Somewhere in its bioengineered brain, in whatever passed for consciousness in a creature designed by alien intelligence, it recognized the end approaching. It didn't flee. It had been programmed to defend the breach, and programming ran deeper than survival instinct. The kaiju positioned itself directly over the dimensional rift, its massive body attempting to shield the opening, attempting to contain whatever force was about to be released. 5 seconds. Kafka regained consciousness in Narumi's arms, his hybrid healing finally stabilizing enough to restore minimal function. Through eyes that were still more kaiju than human, he looked back at the breach, at the Category 6 making its futile stand. For seconds. Did we? Kafka's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, Narumi replied simply. You did it. You actually did it. 3 seconds. The breach began to pulse irregularly, its stable energy patterns fragmenting. The dimensional membrane that connected Earth to the precursor reality was destabilizing, responding to forces it was never designed to contain. 2 seconds. The Category 6 roared one final time, not a sound of aggression or dominance, but something that might have been defiance or acceptance or simply acknowledgement that this was the end. 1 second. The nuclear device detonated in the precursor dimension, releasing energy equivalent to 3 megatons of TNT directly into an alien reality whose physical laws had never been tested against such force. The explosion didn't propagate through the breach into Earth's ocean. The dimensional membrane worked both ways, containing the blast on the precursor side, while transmitting only energy feedback through the connection. But that energy feedback was enough. The breach collapsed. Not gradually, not slowly, but instantaneously, a dimensional tear 300 feet wide slamming shut in less than a second. The Category 6, still positioned over the opening, was caught in the closure event. Reality itself crushed the massive kaiju as the dimensions separated, tearing the creature apart at the molecular level. The shockwave from the dimensional collapse propagated through the water in all directions, a pressure wave that would have pulverized anything caught in its direct path. The assault team, already ascending at maximum velocity, felt the wave hit them like a physical blow. Gypsy Danger's armor plating buckled. Striker Eureka's left arm tore free from its mounting. JDF Specialist's fortitude releases failed simultaneously as the shockwave exceeded their body's capacity to compensate. Then, just as suddenly as it hit, the shockwave passed. The ocean fell silent. 2 miles below, where the breach had pulsed with alien energy for over a decade, there was only ocean floor, sediment, rock, and the settling debris of a kaiju that had died trying to defend a doorway that no longer existed. The war was over. Humanity had won. But victory came with a price that would take years to fully understand. The breach screamed. Not with sound, with existence itself, as Kafka Hibino made his choice. Inside the neural abyss, where the precursor hive mind had reigned for millennia, a single human consciousness burned, like a star going supernova. Kafka's kaiju form pulsed with energy that wasn't destruction, but rejection, a biological NO that rewrote the fundamental code the precursors had used to bridge dimensions. You cannot own what you do not understand. Kafka's voice echoed through the drift, reaching every connected mind across both universes. Asterisk, kaiju aren't weapons. They're not slaves. And I'm done being afraid of what I am. Asterisk. His transformation accelerated beyond anything the JDF had recorded. Beyond 100% fortitude. Beyond measurement. His kaiju cells didn't just adapt to the breach's hostile environment. They harmonized with it, recognizing kinship in the dimensional fabric itself. Because the precursors had made a fatal mistake. They'd engineered kaiju to hunt Kafka, splicing his genetic markers into their latest abominations. In doing so, they'd given him the key to their entire network, a biological backdoor into every kaiju they'd ever created, across every dimension they'd ever touched. Kafka seized it. On the surface, Mina Ashiro felt the drift surge with impossible intensity. Inside Crimson Typhoon's conpod, the way triplets gasped in unison as new data flooded their neural interface, not from their Jaeger, but from inside the breach itself. He's rewriting them, Tang breathed, staring at readouts that defied physics. All of them. Every kaiju signature in the breach is changing. Marshal Pentecost's voice crackled through global comms. All units, stand by. We're reading massive energy fluctuations. The ocean inverted. For 3 impossible seconds, the sea above the breach rose in a column miles high, suspended by forces that made gravity look like a suggestion. Every kaiju that had been clawing toward the surface, dozens of Category 4 and V monstrosities, simply stopped. Their bioluminescent markings flickered, changed color, shifted from hostile crimson to uncertain blue. And then they retreated. Impossible. Tendo breathed from the Loxan command center, watching screens filled with Kaiju's signatures diving back toward the breach. They're withdrawing? Hashina's voice cut through the confusion, sharp with realization. He's not killing them. He's severing the connection, cutting the precursor's control. Deep in the breach, Kafka pushed deeper into the hive mind's architecture, his consciousness fragmenting across 1,000 neural pathways. He could feel the precursor's fury, ancient, cold, utterly alien, but also their confusion. They'd never encountered resistance from inside their own creation. The kaiju of his universe hadn't been engineered. They'd evolved, natural mutations born from humanity's own hubris, independent and chaotic. His transformation had been an accident, a fluke of biology that no precursor could have predicted. That made him the variable they couldn't control. Your war ends here, Kafka growled, his human consciousness anchoring itself even as his kaiju instincts roared. Not with extinction, with choice. He didn't destroy the breach. That would doom any kaiju already in Pacific Rim's universe, trapping them in a world that would hunt them to extinction. Instead, he did something the precursors never imagined possible. He gave the kaiju autonomy. Every creature touched by the precursor network felt the shift, the sudden, terrifying freedom of independent thought. Some fled immediately, diving into the dimensional rift to escape to uninhabited worlds. Others hesitated, neural pathways rewiring as individual consciousness sparked for the first time. 3 Category 4 kaiju simply stopped fighting and sank into the deep ocean, confused but no longer compelled to destroy. The precursors shrieked across dimensional frequencies, trying to reassert control. But Kafka had severed too many connections, introduced too much chaos into their perfect system. And then Mina Ashiro made her choice. Reno, she said calmly through the drift, her neural link to Kafka still burning bright. Fire the resonance pulse. Now, Captain, that'll overload. Now Ichikawa. The JDF's experimental dimensional resonator, designed to detect breach signatures, had been modified during the mission prep. Now linked through Crimson Typhoon systems and amplified by the Jaeger's nuclear reactor, it became something else entirely. A weapon? No. A door. Reno slammed the activation switch. Energy cascaded through the neural link, through Kafka's transformed body, and into the dimensional membrane the precursors had used to anchor the breach. The rift didn't collapse, it bifurcated. Reality split along quantum lines, creating 2 distinct pathways, one that led to the precursor's dimension, now sealed behind a barrier of Kafka's own biology, and one that opened back to the Kaiju number 8 universe. Kafka, you stubborn idiot, Hashina whispered, gripping his combat suit's controls. Come home. The choice was Kafka's alone. He could stay, become the guardian of this dimension, an eternal watchman ensuring the precursors never returned. His kaiju form was powerful enough, adaptable enough. He could live centuries protecting this world. Or he could go home, back to a universe that still feared him, that might never fully accept what he'd become. Through the drift, he felt Mina's steady presence, Hashina's fierce loyalty, Reno's unwavering belief, Kikaru's grudging respect, and beneath it all, the faint echo of Jaeger pilots who'd accepted him not despite his kaiju nature, but because of what he chose to do with it. I'm just a guy who wanted to clean up kaiju, Kafka murmured, his massive form beginning to shrink as he pulled back from the breach's depths. Guess I got a little carried away. He emerged from the rift 30 seconds later, his kaiju transformation receding to reveal a battered, exhausted human being who collapsed immediately into the ocean. Crimson Typhoon caught him with surprising gentleness. 3 weeks had passed since the breach had transformed from humanity's greatest threat into something unprecedented, a controlled gateway between universes. The joint conference room in the Hong Kong Shatterdome held an odd collection of heroes, each representing a paradigm shift in how their worlds understood the war against Kaiju. Marshal Pentecost stood beside JDF Captain Mina Ashiro, both reviewing holographic displays that showed two universes now connected by a stable, controlled dimensional gateway. Not a breach, a bridge. Your tech combined with our Jaegers, Pentecost said quietly, created something neither universe could have achieved alone. Mina nodded. The precursors will try again. They always do. Then we'll be ready. Together. Across the room, Hashina demonstrated combat suit techniques to a fascinated group of Jaeger pilots, while Reno and Kokoro argued good-naturedly with PPDC engineers about fortitude release percentages versus neural load distribution. Kafka sat apart, staring at his hands, fully human now, but still carrying kaiju cells that would never fully leave him. He'd become something unprecedented, a living bridge between species, between universes, between what humanity feared and what it might become. You good? Mako Mori asked, settling into the seat beside him. Ask me in a decade, Kafka replied with a tired smile. Fair enough. She paused. For what it's worth, you changed everything. Both worlds. Just did what needed doing. That's what makes you dangerous, Mako said. But she was smiling. To all the right people. Outside, the Pacific stretched endlessly beneath gathering stars. Somewhere in its depths, freed kaiju swam in patterns that might have been confusion or might have been the first stumbling steps toward something like peace. The breach remained, but now it was monitored, controlled, and most importantly understood. Two universes. One unprecedented alliance. And a former cleanup worker who'd accidentally become the hinge on which both worlds turned. Kafka Hibino looked up at the stars and wondered what his next disaster would be. He didn't have to wait long. The dimensional bridge between universes didn't solve everything. It never could. Kaiju still emerged, though less frequently, and old fears died hard in both worlds. But something fundamental had shifted in humanity's endless war against monsters. The JDF returned home with Jaeger technology. The PPDC gained combat suit enhancements that would revolutionize individual pilot survival. More importantly, both organizations had proven that collaboration across impossible distances, across realities themselves, could turn certain defeat into unexpected victory. Kafka Hibino remained what he'd always been, a cleanup worker who'd stumbled into greatness and somehow survived it. His kaiju cells were dormant but permanent, a living reminder that the line between human and monster was far more complicated than anyone wanted to admit. In classified reports filed by both Marshal Pentecost and Captain Ashiro, a single phrase appeared identically. The threat has evolved. So must we. Two universes, forever changed by a collision neither had predicted. The precursors had been pushed back, but not eliminated. New kaiju would come, they always did. But now when they arrived, they'd face something unprecedented. Two humanities, united across dimensions, armed with combined technology and hard-won understanding that monsters weren't always the enemy. Sometimes they were the bridge to survival itself.